We'll go ahead and get started and welcome you to the November 13th Forward Pinellas meeting. We will get started with our invocation and pledge led by Mayor Bradbury.
Thank you.
Please rise if you can.
Bow your heads if you wish. Heavenly Father, we ask this day that you protect and heal any of our citizens that are in need. We ask that you watch over our employees and their families and keep them safe as they serve our communities. We ask that you watch over the military, whether they are here or overseas, and protect them and their families. We also give you a special thanks for our veterans, and please remember them 365 days a year, not only on Veterans Day. We ask that you watch over us as we go over the agenda that is before us, that we might do what is best for our communities as a whole. In thy name we do pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, before we have citizens to be heard, we'll just go around the dais and introduce ourselves. I know Commissioner Sofer and Councilmember Rice will be here shortly. They're supposed to be here at the meeting, but a little bit late, so we'll start down there, Mayor.
Hi, I'm Julie Ward-Bajalski, Mayor of the great city of Dunedin.
David Albritton, Council Member, City of Clearwater.
Michael Smith, Commissioner, City of Largo.
Cookie Kennedy, Mayor of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, representing all the beach communities.
Whit Blanton, Executive Director.
Dave Eggers, Pinellas County Commissioner.
Ken Welch, County Commission.
Karen Seal, County Commission.
Sandra Bradbury, Mayor of the City of Pinellas Park in our heart.
Janet Long, Pinellas County Commission.
Thank you all. Appreciate that. And we'll go into citizens to be heard. And remember, each of you, please come forward, give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the commission. And Camille Hebting, are you here? Please come forward. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Camille Hepting, 1755 Fulton Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to make a public comment. I am here today on behalf of Clearwater Ferry Services, as well as on my own behalf as a Pinellas County resident. I would like to urge this board to consider waterborne transportation as part of the future of transit in Pinellas County. The truth is that it's helped reduce congestion on the roads for the last 4.5 years without any help from county or state dollars so far. As a private transit agency, we would like to see it included in plans made for all transit as well as transit alternatives. Our riders enjoy riding with us and will continue to support our operations, but the ridership can only increase if we increase the frequency as well as the destinations, which is not currently being funded. Water transportation is one of the only shovel-ready projects there are for transit, and we would appreciate your support to continue to grow it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Camille. And
These folks may want to speak to a public hearing item, so,
oh, okay.
yeah, when we get there.
Yeah, we're gonna be discussing our long-range plan, and you're welcome to stay. And if you want to comment again, then that would be appropriate. There's a few people that were going to comment at that time. So, and Julie Peluso, please come forward.
Morning.
Hi, Julie. Where are you?
Morning.
I don't know if you have the overhead here. Do you have
Yep, just put it right there on the
okay.
on the seal.
My
Yep.
name is Julie Peluso. I'm a resident of Palm Harbor, 3340 McNabb Drive. I just wanted to invite you all. We're having a town hall meeting in Palm Harbor at the library on December 12th at 6 p.m. To discuss the proposed roundabout by DOT for alternate 19. There was a recently a meeting to have all the residents come look at it. And from attending and hearing all the residents and hearing that they really are not for this, I put out just an informal, questionnaire. Are you for this or against it, or would you rather have a light, which is warranted just at the next intersection, which is Nebraska and alternate 19? 70% of 450 comments in 24 hours said they really want that light. and only 16% wanted this roundabout. So please, I know you're forward Pinellas, but please pause, come to this meeting in December, and allow these residents the opportunity to give their input, to understand information, and before you proceed. Sometimes the best way to go forward is to pause and allow those that you're leading to understand why something is happening, or maybe maybe it should change.
Julie, just so you know, I did talk with the secretary, and the county staff will be talking with FDOT about potentially having a meeting, and we'll let you know how that goes and how it might work with or separate from your meeting that you're talking
Oh,
about.
wonderful. Okay, this one is with the Palm Harbor Chamber of
Understand.
Government Affairs.
Understand.
So,
Okay,
great,
thanks.
thank you.
What time was that meeting again?
It
Excuse
is
me.
at 6 p.m. till 7:30. So it'll be in a moderated format. So we'll have a panel, and hopefully someone from Forward Pinellas, DOT will be there, and our state representatives to make sure that, and maybe other stakeholders, to make sure that people have that opportunity in a large venue to be able to, platform to talk.
And I know you'll do a good job of policing everybody to be mindful of everybody's input.
I'll just serve refreshments.
Yeah,
that's all.
I know. Well,
One
yeah,
quick question,
thanks.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Ms. Palooza,
Yes.
thank you for coming to our commission meeting yesterday as well. Just curious, what was your survey method?
So
Was it
this
online
is, because we're unincorporated, we don't have like a town hall like some people. But this is Palm Harbor Happenings. They work in conjunction, they're social media.
Okay, so it was
and
online?
Yes, and it's in conjunction, now they're working with the chamber as well to
Okay.
disseminate
Thank you.
information.
Okay.
I have a copy too, if anybody wants.
Sure.
You do?
Yeah,
Is that right? Anyone else?
thank you.
We can pass that around here.
get it
Thanks,
scanned.
Julie. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the, is there anybody else before I start that came in who wanted to speak at this time? There are a few that want to speak, and there'll be opportunities later in the meeting to speak to specific agenda items. Okay, we have a consent agenda made up of, looks like A through Z. Actually, it's A through K or something like that.
Close.
Well, I'm looking at an old one then because
Second.
you have,
It's A through L right here.
okay. Which includes, and I'm just, because nobody else can see that, we're talking about approval of the October 9th minutes, approval of committee appointments, acceptance of year-end financial, approval of 2020 board and committee meeting schedules, acceptance of planners advisory roster for 2020, countywide plan annual update, approval of the award of number 1905 communications and web support, and authorization of agreement. And I'd like for somebody maybe just to let us know what that's about, just a minute before we approve that. Approval of transit-oriented development strategic plan participation agreement, approval of Forward Pinellas travel policy, approval of FDOT agreement for downtown St. Petersburg area master plan, approval of St. Petersburg agreement for downtown St. Petersburg area master plan, and approval of transportation disadvantage service plan amendments. Besides the item G, which I just want to pull to just for Whit to give us a little background on that one, is there anything else that needs to be or wants to be pulled? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda item G aside?
Move approval.
Thank you. Did you get that? Commissioner Long and Commissioner Welch? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. If you do the G for us.
Sure, I'll address G. Sarah Caper of our staff led a request for proposals process where we had 14 responses. We were very pleased with the quality of the responses. We ended up interviewing 4 firms after scoring and shortlisting, and those 4 firms are presented in the packet to you today. We are recommending 1 firm for selection, and we'll negotiate with that top firm and then work our way down if we're unable to negotiate. The Media Relations Group was the top-ranked firm, followed by Marley Nonami Incorporated. These are firms that have a responsibility for or skill set in website design and development, communications, outreach, engagement, graphics. We were looking for support to help our communications manager, Hillary Lehman. And I think 2020 is going to be a particularly important year for communications. We have on today's agenda an adoption of the long-range plan. We'll be working on implementing that long-range plan and communicating it. And as you know, there are a lot of ideas in transportation that need a lot of communication, whether it's a roundabout or whether it's a bike trail or whether it's a highway overpass. And as we move forward on those projects, I think it just really helps us to have some professionals who are there and ready to assist. And the impetus for doing this primarily was we had some issues with our website recently, and we don't have a website support firm under contract, and we needed somebody that we could just go to immediately address website needs. It's also in need of a refresh after about 3 years.
Okay. Any questions on that from anybody? Can I get a motion to approve that item?
Move approval.
Second.
Cookie.
Biggest mouth.
Mayor Cookie, yeah. I wasn't going to say that. I did say yeah, but no, I didn't mean it that way.
That's
All
what
in
you have
favor
to
say-
do. to
Aye.
be
Favor
a
say
cookie.
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we're going to move into the MPO portion of the public hearings. So we'll go straight to Whit.
Yeah, so the first one is the amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program. And Jensen, are you going to come up and address both of these?
Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, Board.
Afternoon.
Jensen Hackett with the Department of Transportation. I'm actually going to be doing both 5A and 5B, but I'll do them separately as they require a roll call vote for those. So the first one is a tip amendment. This actually was incorrect in your board packets as the description of the limits there. It's actually the 40th Avenue Northeast Bridge over the Placido Bayou. This is in St. Petersburg, so it was written incorrectly as I think it says Sheldon and Hillsborough Boulevard in there, but it should be as 40th Avenue Northeast over the Placido Bayou. This is actually an advance mint of monies for this project. It is moving into current year, fiscal year 20, for the reconstruction of that bridge over the bayou. This will also have local payback in 22 and 24 as this was advanced into the current year, fiscal 20, by local funding of the city of St. Petersburg. So this is just to amend into the tip, the movement of this in fiscal year 20 for the bridge replacement.
Thanks, Jensen. Any questions for Jensen? So this is a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to come forward and speak to this item? Seeing none, I bring it back to the board for motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Did you get those? Thank you.
Mayor
Oh,
Bujalski.
go ahead.
Aye.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Commissioner Welch.
Aye.
Commissioner Seal.
Aye.
Mayor Bradbury.
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
She'll be right back.
Commissioner Eggers.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Jensen, you're up again. So
All
go
right.
ahead.
So this is the second one, which is 5B in your packets. When the MPO develops the UPWP, which was actually developed almost 2 years ago now, for the fiscal year 20 allocations of FTA 5305 funds, we put a placeholder in that allocation amount because that has not been released yet through the federal government coming into fiscal year 20. We have those current allocation numbers for you, and the DDR for that goes to $54,478. DU, which is state money, goes to $435,823. Local funds goes up to $54,478, bringing the total amount of your FTA fiscal year 20 allocation to $544,779, which is actually an increase from what was placeholdered in there back when you guys developed the UPWP almost 2 years ago. So this is essentially just truing up those numbers to what the actual allocation is in the tip.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Public hearing, does anybody that wants to speak to this can come forward? Okay, not seeing none, I need a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Go ahead.
Mayor Bujalski.
Aye.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Commissioner Welch.
Aye.
Commissioner Seal.
Aye.
Mayor Bradbury.
Aye.
Commissioner Eggers.
Aye, and that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Appreciate that, Jensen. Okay, we're moving on to the fall update of the 2020-2024 TIP program, and Jared Austin is here. Thank you. Hi, Jared.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Jared Austin, Program Planner for Pinellas. Today I'll be walking through the Forward Pinellas inclusion of the FY20 through 2025 County Capital Improvement Program into the FY19 through 24 TIP. So every year, Forward Pinellas is required to adopt the current fiscal year Transportation Improvement Program by July 1 for the county to receive state and federal funding for transportation projects. This process already happened back in June and was approved, and the FY19 20 through 23-24 TIP went into effect on October 1st, 2019. So the federal requirements have already been completed. However, one thing that we do as the local MPO, or the county MPO rather, is incorporate a variety of local work programs throughout the county, including the local work programs from our various municipal governments throughout Pinellas County, PSTA, various local airports throughout Pinellas County, the Port of St. Pete, and perhaps the largest of them all, the county CIP, or Capital Improvement Program, which someone for the county will be speaking on shortly after this. In addition to this, we incorporate a variety of supplemental materials, which you all have, including maps that have the various project locations along with their corresponding project numbers, as well as a series of summary tables that have those same project numbers identified, where more information can be found about the location, project description, and status of those projects throughout Pinellas County. So the next step, if approved by you all today, the county CIP and local work programs will be incorporated into the current TIP, the FY19 20 through 23-24 TIP. And also, in honor of National GIS Day, I would be remiss not to mention the unveiling of the interactive TIP, which went live on our website about a week and a half or so ago, which can be found at this link here at aegis.pinellas.gov/apps/forwardpinellas-TIP. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the county for an overview of the Pinellas County CIP transportation projects.
And as Nancy McKibben makes her way up, I'd like to just accommodate or acknowledge Jared and the interactive TIP, which was a long time in coming. And it's been unveiled, and I saw that several of our board members shared that on social media. It is a really easy way for people to identify the transportation projects that are in the work program near them or that affect their daily commute. And I think Jared did a fantastic job. He worked with Pinellas County GIS staff, and it's really a neat tool. Again, great work, Jared. Thank you. Nancy, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy McKibben. I am the Capital Improvement Transportation Coordinator for Public Works. And I'd like to go over a brief summary of the Transportation Capital Improvement Program. Naturally, this isn't a comprehensive look at the overall budget, but it does give you a nice snapshot of what we plan for fiscal year 20. So, let's see if I can do this. We have several major roadway projects. You may recall these because naturally they take years to develop and finally come to fruition. The first one is the Haynes Roadway Improvement Project, and we'll also talk about Forest Lakes Boulevard capacity improvements. So Haynes Road Phase 2 goes, this would be from south to north. It would be from 60th Avenue North up to the juncture with US Highway 19. And we're currently taking a 2-lane rural roadway section. We're going to improve it to a 2-lane urban section. We're going to include multimodal improvements such as bicycle lanes, improve the ADA sidewalks and pedestrian features, and also try to take care of that 5-lane intersection at 62nd Avenue with, I think it's 31st Street. We'll be installing mast arms and pedestrian signals. And we'll also be doing this with a phased construction method so that we will try to eliminate as many temporary closures and detours as possible. So this is currently under construction, and it is estimated to be complete in Q3 of fiscal year '21.
Any questions on that one? Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So Forest Lakes Boulevard, roadway improvements from Pine Avenue to west of Racetrack Road. You may know that Forest Lakes Boulevard is currently a 4-lane divided highway from Tampa Road all the way to approximately Pine Avenue, and we're going to be taking this 2-lane divided rural section and continuing the 4-lane divided section with widening and milling and resurfacing. We'll be providing continuous ADA sidewalks, pedestrian features, 10-foot shoulders, and we will also be modifying the roadway ditches. We'll be including mast arms and pedestrian signals at Pine Avenue, and this is also a phased construction, so we'll minimize the amount of delay and detours. It is under construction, and its estimated completion is Q4 of fiscal year '21.
Yeah, I think, and later on when we talk about the, let's see, the trends and conditions report, it's one of our heavier congested roads, so it's going to be a big improvement to that area.
Absolutely.
Big employment area up there.
Absolutely. And just as an FYI, it's not in this report, but we're currently in a preliminary engineering phase for Forest Lakes Boulevard from State Route 584, which is Tampa Road, down to St. Petersburg Avenue, which is State Route 580. So we'll be continuing that widening and pedestrian improvements, because there is a elementary school within 2 miles of that segment, and some pretty dense industrial employment centers and also residential centers. So a couple of our major intersection projects that we'll talk about would be Betty Lane at Sunset Point Road, Northeast Coachman Road at Old Coachman Road, and Whitney Road at Wolford Road. If you've tried to drive down Sunset Point Road, right now you've probably experienced some frustration because the road is closed because of the construction of the intersection of Betty Lane. This will be a hopefully construction complete by Q2 of fiscal year '21, and we're adding turn lanes to the east-west approaches for Betty Lane, shoulders and bike lanes. We're going to be replacing a previously installed and borrowed prefabricated pedestrian bridge, and replacing that with a box culvert for Spring Branch Bayou that will have sidewalks and pedestrian features installed on it. We'll be putting in mast arms and pedestrian signals, and we'll be milling and resurfacing all the way to Kings Highway. Also, if you've driven on this section, you'll notice that there was quite a bit of the cross-section of the road was very substandard, so we'll be trying to remediate that with the milling and resurfacing.
So from Betty Lane up to Highland right now is being finished. The road work is being finished.
From Betty Lane to Kings Highway.
To Kings
And
Highway,
then
I'm
from
sorry,
Kings
that's right,
Highway
yeah,
to,
yeah.
actually Kings Highway to Keene Road, County Road 1 is future years PER
There's
for.
one that's finishing right. It's
Correct, yes.
Close to being finished,
Yeah.
It's.
thankfully.
Yes.
It's been forever, but, yes,
So-
Commissioner.
Are bike lanes under construction or sidewalks from Alt 19 to Betty Lane? We got part
Well,
of them
right
to the
now,
trail to.
To the trail, from
Yeah.
Alt 19 to the trail, that's a sidewalk project, and it is very soon to be under construction, but because of the right-of-way constraints, there won't be bike lanes. We'll
There won't be bike lanes?
No.
But there will be sidewalks on both sides of the road?
For a portion from the trail going west up to the first street, as you're going west on the south side of the road, there'll be sidewalks on both sides. But then from that side street, which I can't remember the name right now, going westward, there'll only be continuous sidewalk on the north side of Sunset Point Road.
On the north side.
To Alternate 19.
But there will be sidewalks finally. 'cause
Yes.
that is-
Finally, because I've heard about that for, could you send me the actual, like a project sheet or
Sure.
something that shows?
Absolutely, yeah,
Where
a
it's
little
gonna be?
schematic of the
Okay.
stop and start, yes.
Question.
Yeah, Commissioner Welch.
Not to take us off course, but when we do a sidewalk that's going to serve double duty, is there a standard length or width?
Well, we normally, double-duty sidewalks, we would want to try to maintain like an 8-foot, like our multi-use trails are typically minimum of 8 to like a maximum of 12. But unfortunately, with this part of Sunset Point Road, we had these right-of-way constraints, and we were unsuccessful in obtaining enough easements to
Okay.
fulfill that. So this sidewalk is a 6-foot sidewalk in this area.
That's still a pretty good size, though.
It is.
Yeah,
I've seen worse.
yeah, me too.
You've ridden on worse, probably.
Yeah. Any
Well,
other questions on that one?
22nd Avenue, I have
So,
to mention that.
again, this particular project is going to go to Betty Lane to Kings Highway.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so from, what's happening from Douglas to Betty Lane?
That has already been constructed.
Constructed,
So we
that's right,
we have
okay.
sidewalk on an urban section from
Yep.
the trail up to Douglas,
And then you said in future years, we'll go from Kings Highway to Keene.
all the way to Keene. We're looking at that. It's not in the approved budget, but it's in outer years, and we'll be programming a preliminary engineering study again for that one.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nancy.
So Northeast Coachman Road at Old Coachman Road, this is another intersection improvement that's under construction currently. Very challenging intersection with the CSX Railroad going right smack dab through the middle of it. So we'll be putting turn lanes on all 4 approaches. So this would be left turn in, right turn lanes, ADA improvements, sidewalks, pedestrian features. We are going to be, the railroad crossing doesn't need to be upgraded per se, but because we're widening, the cantilevers and the signal gates will have to be moved, and so we're coordinating that with CSX. And in addition, we'll be installing mast arms and pedestrian signals. And we'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about our trail projects, but this is a connection point for the Ream-Wilson Trail that will continue on northward, so I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the trail program. So we're looking for completion of this in February or Q2 of fiscal year '21, and right now it's about 23% complete. Whitney Road at Wolford Road. Okay, Whitney Road is in the Clearwater area. It's a county road, a county maintained road, and it serves a high school, very densely populated. It's a very challenging road, no sidewalks, no pedestrian facilities, and it runs east of US 19 towards Old Tampa Bay. It's Clearwater Central Catholic, is that the high school? Yes. So it has very deep ditches on the south side of the road, making anything but vehicular even for vehicles, it can be challenging. So we're improving and reconfiguring the intersection with Wolford, reconstructing the approaches and applying all the ADA and pedestrian features. The complication here is the intersection with Long Branch Creek, so we're installing, replacing culverts and dealing with some permitting issues and floodplain compensation issues on that one. So it has delayed that project a little bit. We're expecting construction to start in Q4 of fiscal year '20.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner.
thank you for that update. And you may have said it and I just beeped out. When will that project be completed?
Well, it hasn't gone to bid yet, so I don't know that I can give you a definitive construction duration. Typically, these types of projects that involve intersections have maintenance of traffic challenges. So if we estimate to start in Q4 of fiscal year '20, I would probably, we like to give the contractor generous amount of duration period. So I would think that we'd be looking at about at least a year, maybe to 18 months.
I just would like to share with the board that I'm on the board at Clearwater Central Catholic High School, and that whole area there has been such an enormous problem for the school for at least the last 3 or 4 years. It's really tough getting those kids and out, and the families that come and go to that facility. Plus, they're in the process of rebuilding the entire campus. So there's a lot of activity with construction. Oh, yeah, they're all done except for one building. That's been ongoing for a while. But besides the construction trucks coming and going and the activity with the kids, because they have a very, very active athletic program before and after school and on the weekends, that it's tough.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. A lot of people don't know it because it's kind of tucked away.
Yes, it's a jewel right in the middle of our county. No question.
Somebody else? Thank you, Commissioner.
So we do have some major sidewalk projects. The one that we just talked about, the Sunset Point Road Phase 3 from alternate 19 to the trail. Indian Rocks Road Phase 2B, which runs from Wilcox Road to 8th Avenue Southwest. Park Boulevard Safe Route to Schools from Starkey Road to 66th Street North. 42nd Avenue, this is in the Lealman area, from 35th Street North to 46th Street North. And Hercules Avenue North Phase 2 from Sherwood to Sunset Point Road. So we'll briefly go over these. We did talk about the Sunset Point Road from alternate 19 to trail. If you don't mind, I'll fast forward through that one. So the Indian Rocks Road sidewalk, we're very pleased to report that Phase 2A, which would go from Wilcox to just the first major drainage crossing, which is Church Creek, is in substantial completion phase. This is on the east side of the road, basically in front of Onona Methodist Church and Serenity Gardens. The companion project, Phase 2B, would go from Church Creek all the way up to 8th Avenue Southwest, and that is beyond the 60% design phase, but not quite to the 90% design phase. So we do expect that Phase 2B will be, we're looking for starting construction in Q4 of fiscal year 20, so we're very close. Questions? Park Boulevard Safe Route to Schools from Starkey Road to 66th Street North. This was like an infill project where we had gaps in sidewalks. We have a lot of driveways on Park Boulevard, and this was a grant from DOT to improve pedestrian accessibility at intersections and improve the access control measures at the driveways. And it is scheduled for completion in Q2 of fiscal year 20.
Go ahead.
Oops, sorry. Okay, 42nd Avenue Southwest, this is a sidewalk and drainage improvement from 35th Street North to 46th Street North. This corridor was identified in the Linking Lealman study as a very important connector, and we are continuing forward with the work done by the Planning Department in their complete streets study for this corridor. So we'll be looking at improving basically the sidewalk connectivity in that area. 42nd Avenue is in the vicinity of just a little bit south of Joe's Creek. It's very very densely populated. And as in Lealman, we do have challenges with roadside ditches, more or less, that we're trying to enclose and still, maintain compliance with our stormwater rules and our floodplain compensation. Hercules Avenue Phase 2 from Sherwood to Sunset Point. This is actually in the bid process, so it is a gap that currently exists, and it's primarily on the west side of Hercules Avenue. It will connect to the phase sidewalk that goes from Sunset Point North to Greenbrier that was completed, I think, in about 2017. So this one does involve some major stormwater conveyance. We'll be putting in a pedestrian bridge over a major channel and installation of box culverts. Our major shared use path projects, the Duke Energy Trail Phase 2B, which is from Northeast Coachman to Sunset Point Road. The construction start on that is January of 2020. coming up very quickly. The Ream Wilson Pinellas Trail improvements. Now, this is the one that I spoke to when we were talking about the intersection. This will actually complete the trail segment where you can get on the trail at Philippi Park and take it all the way to the Long Center on Belcher Road. So this is a great segment. It does cross Alligator Creek, so we are installing a pedestrian bridge at that point as well. The Pinellas Trail North Loop from John Chestnut Senior Park to Enterprise Road overpass. We are incorporating the recommendation from the board to evaluate an alignment that connects to the Duke corridor at Northside Drive. Currently had a open house public meeting to have the public's input, and we are looking for a construction start in third quarter of fiscal year 20.
Commissioner Welch?
Thank you. Very exciting stuff. On 42nd Avenue, which is a real hodgepodge of no sidewalk on the south or north, and the ditches, has that been designed yet?
It's in design. It's approximately, I would say, between the 60 and 90% phase.
Is there something you could send us so we can just look at it?
Absolutely.
I'm really curious on how you transformed that area and what your approach was. You know, where you're going to put the sidewalk. Is it going to be both south and north?
I believe it's primarily on the south side.
Okay. South side only? Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner?
No, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Go ahead.
Okay.
So our ITS-ATMS program is very robust. We have completed several very important segments. County Road 1 is substantially complete, and Belcher Road South. The Gulf Boulevard is expected to start construction in January, and the alternate US 19 South is currently under construction. So this definitely is in alignment with the county's initiative to relieve congestion by using the fiber optic cables for the video detection along these corridors, and including the CCTV cameras and the dynamic message boards.
Nancy, once all the hardware's in place, like we're doing in these areas, then updating the software is something that we'll have to do from time to time, but this is the...
This is the hardware, the hard installation. And these numbers that, to your point, Commissioner, is that these are the construction dollars just for that infrastructure. There definitely is, other costs associated. So if you see the line items in the actual capital improvement budget, the budgets are going to be a little bit larger than these construction dollars.
And the TVs are just for traffic control?
That is correct, yes. We do have, the intuitive intelligent traffic system, but yes, it's monitored and not used for, any other purposes. In fact, I don't even think they have the ability to keep the video. All right, new for fiscal year 20. On the top of the list, 46th Avenue North, which would be a nice parallel to 42nd Avenue. This will go from 49th Street North to 38th Street North. Actually, we're going to take it a little bit further and see if we can't go to that PALS facility that's beyond the railroad tracks. So we're in the preliminary engineering phase for that. 54th Avenue North from 49th Street North to 34th Street North will be a continuation of the Planning Department's complete street study in order to facilitate the accommodating the middle turn lane that was so necessary for that particular corridor. Forest Lakes Boulevard Phase 3 we spoke about earlier. Starkey Road, Flamevine from Bryan Dairy will continue the widening that we've already done on Starkey Road and connect approximately where Flamevine is close to 84th Avenue up to Bryan Dairy, where we've already improved that intersection. Belcher Road at Gulf to Bay Boulevard, we're in that PER stage as well. Our consultant heeded the request of the board and has developed a animation to be presented to both Fort Pinellas and the Board of Commissioners, so that at that point we can go to the public and show them the alternatives for that intersection. 62nd Avenue from 34th to 49th Street. We recently did have a public open house. We're moving forward with that PER to look at the alternatives to improve that corridor as well. And the Pinellas Trail Loop in the Duke Energy Corridor South Gap Phase 1A is currently in design, and this will complete that last, this is a segment that will complete the last loop from Haynes Bay Shore down to San Martin, and actually Patica Road. It'll hook up to the St. Pete Trail system. I think that's it for me.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
I don't think so. This is an action item.
Yeah, we need a motion for approval of this,
So moved.
Second.
and it's a roll call.
Mayor Bujalski?
Aye.
Commissioner Sofer?
Aye.
Councilmember Albritton?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Rice?
Yes.
Commissioner Welch?
Aye.
Commissioner Steele?
Aye.
Mayor Bradbury?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
And Commissioner Eggers?
Aye. And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 5D, adoption of the Advantage Pinellas Plan. And Chelsea?
Yep. As Chelsea's coming up here, I'll say a few words about this one. We're really excited to be here. This has been a lot of effort over the last 18 months. I think Chelsea's leaving on vacation tomorrow. Hopefully she'll be back soon.
She's shaking her head yes.
Hopefully she'll come back, let's just say that. No, she's done a great job. As you know, we've had a ton of outreach. I just want to remind everybody a little bit about the long-range transportation plan. We adopt this every 5 years, and it reflects changing projections of population, employment, tourism numbers. All those things are taken into account, policy changes that are made by our local governments and by the state, and anything that happens in federal law gets reflected in this long-range plan that's a requirement of metropolitan planning organizations. We can amend this plan as needed, so we have done that over the last 4 years I've been here. We've amended the plan several times. We might find that there's a project that we didn't think had any money available, and somebody, whether it's private or public, decides this is a project that is worthy and we have money to fund it. We would then perhaps consider amending our plan to incorporate that in there. But if you want the state or federal participation, the project has to be in our cost-feasible long-range transportation plan. So again, just a reminder that it is a document that we use and reference all the time, and it is a document that is relatively fixed, but also changeable as circumstances warrant. And it reinforces our countywide plan that you recommended a couple of meetings ago to the Board of County Commissioners on our land use vision and land use strategies for Pinellas County. So this is sort of an embodiment of land use vision first and transportation projects to support that vision second. And so here we are with phase 2.
So slightly unrelated, we did pass out some documents to you. In front of you, you do have a copy of the 2018 traffic count map. It shows all of the counts from the count stations throughout Pinellas County. These just came in yesterday. We have extra copies. If you'd like additional ones for your office, just let us know, Commissioner Seal, and we'll send some over to you.
You don't leave anywhere without this, do you?
Leave it in my car and I plan my travel around it.
And we've also handed out some hard copies of our summary document and the appendices. You did receive links to these in your committee packets and agendas, but we wanted you each to have a hard copy going into today. So we've been working on this now for about 4 years. It's been a very long process, but today is the day that we're going to wrap it all up and adopt our cost-feasible long-range transportation plan. We've done a lot of work over the last 2 years, analyzing our low-income and minority populations, projecting out the financial revenues we believe we'll have between now and 2045, identifying all of the needs across the network for roadway, bicycle, pedestrian, and transit. We've been doing a lot of public outreach, and then that has all led just to the list of projects that we'll be adopting today. So just a little reminder as to one of the other things that went into the process. When we first started out, we projected forward the population and employment for Pinellas County through 2045. And this was done in coordination with all of our different local governments. And this is what we projected for the population. An increase of about 10% is what we're anticipating. And the map that you see on your screen, the darker the color, the more people we believe are going to be locating. That's additional population between now and 2045. And what we're also projecting was about just under 30% of that additional population is going to be located in our activity centers. So we work very closely with our land use planners to identify where this growth would go, linking to the land use vision. And then for our employment forecast, we believe we'll be adding about 60,000 jobs in Pinellas County. That's about an 11% increase, and about 13% of those jobs are projected to be within our activity centers. So as we mentioned last month, the outreach that we've been doing for the last couple of years has been very consistent all along the way. People want investments in the technology like Nancy just talked about, and our timing the traffic signals and our intelligent transportation systems investments, improved transit and bicycle pedestrians. They want the roadways maintained, but there's very little support for continued widening of our roadways throughout Pinellas County. And I really want to walk through what those main funding sources are with you again, just as a reminder as to some of the constraints and limitations we have on our funding. Local funds are always available for transportation investments. They're very flexible. They can be used for any mode of transportation. However, most local governments are already using 100% of their local funding on other projects. If additional local funding were to be available, it could be used as a match to draw in additional state and federal funding, but at this time there are few additional local dollars available to match. The other funding source that comes out of the state is what we call our strategic intermodal system, our SIS funds. Those are restricted to the roadways that you see identified on that map there in red and blue. These are main roads, intermodal centers, rails, and ports that are identified by the state as being critical for interstate travel. The funding is allocated by the state. Transit on these facilities is not included. If we were to run a bus on, say, US 19 or I-275, it would not be eligible for the SIS funding. In Pinellas County, that funding is restricted to the roadway construction itself. And over the life of the long-range plan between now and 2045, we're looking at about $556 million in this funding source that's being included in the plan. Other arterials is another funding source. Again, this is a state funding source. This can be used for any state road on the SIS or not on the SIS. But it can also be used on local roads if they are parallel to a state road and they serve as a reliever to the state roadway network. However, in order to utilize these funds on local roadways, the locals have to have that 50% match. And there aren't a whole lot of state roads that we're planning on widening going into the future. So we have about $1.1 billion being spent of this revenue source in the long-range plan. The projections provided to us by the state, we actually couldn't use all of them because we didn't have enough local matching dollars to draw in. So we are leaving just over $300 million of this funding source on the table in the long-range plan. And then we have our Transportation Management Area Funds, our TMA funds. These are highly flexible. They can be used on all modes of transportation. These are federal dollars that come into the urbanized area and then are allocated based on MPO priorities. It's about $350 million over the next 20 years. So what we've done with this funding source is we've allocated just about 100% of this to non-roadway widening projects. We've set aside $1 million each year to cover our Complete Streets grant funding program for construction. We've set aside $1 million every year over the life of the plan to cover technology. This could be the intelligent transportation systems, upgrades, and other additional technology that we're not even thinking of at this point. We at least have it set aside in the long-range plan to be able to fund that. And then we've also set aside $1.5 million annually for bus replacements through PSTA, and then $500,000 for regional transit capital. This could be anything from regional van pool service, implementation of the TBARTA Regional Transit Development Plan, waterborne transportation services. We left it undefined so that as these projects come up and are identified as a high priority, we have the funding set aside to be able to move them forward. And then the last bit of money that we had from that funding source, the TMA funds, we've spent on our active transportation projects. We've committed $62 million to fund bicycle and pedestrian improvements in what were identified as our top 10 priority corridors. You can see there on the map, they'll go all the way from northern Pinellas County all the way through South St. Pete. And then there was a little bit of extra money left over. So we said, all right, let's fund trail overpasses. So we have enough money in the plan to fund a minimum of 4 overpasses at high conflict locations. The active transportation plan is still being finalized, but through that planning process, we will identify a prioritization method to identify which one of those, where those overpasses will be located. In terms of our unfunded needs, on the trail side, we believe we have about $38 million in unfunded trail needs countywide. That's a planning level estimate. You know, as you get into these things, that cost could go up or down, but that's the estimate that we came up with. And in terms of unfunded overpasses, we're still working through that to figure out how many we have, where they are, and how much they'll each cost. So when we talk about our cost feasible roadway projects, and we've been showing you the tables, you might have noticed that a few projects are missing. This map right here, and it's also in your packet, shows what we call our existing and committed roadway projects. These are the projects that are already in the Transportation Improvement Program, funded in the next 5 years. So you'll see a couple of segments of US 19. You'll see a trail, the Pinellas Trail Loop portion in blue there in the middle of your screen. Also improvements to I-275 throughout Pinellas County and the Gateway Expressway. So these are the projects that we kind of built off of. We already assumed these were coming, so we moved on from there. This is a very busy map, I apologize, but it is also in your packet. These are our cost feasible and unfunded roadway projects. You'll see that there are only 2 projects that are considered unfunded and unfunded need. We did have that additional revenue left over. However, there is one segment of McMullen Booth Road from the Bayside Bridge up to, I believe, Tampa Road. Pinellas County is going to be doing a corridor study along that area. So when the ultimate improvements are identified, we'll add them into the plan. But as of right now, we just didn't really know what to do with that project, so it's a placeholder for now. All of the other projects you'll see going from north to south are actually identified as being cost feasible. We believe that we can fund these projects between now and 2045. These are not all capacity projects. Some of them are more complete streets projects, like you heard about earlier on the Haynes Road, improving the drainage, adding sidewalks, bike lanes. There are very few actual capacity projects remaining on this map. Most of them are going to be along the US 19 North Corridor. So it's about $1.8 billion between now and 2045. And then you'll see our unfunded roadways. It's only about $150 million. Again, because we've done an excellent job building our roads throughout Pinellas County. So we do have some unfunded needs through other modes, but on the roadway side, we're pretty much set for the next 20 years. And I will point out this does not include maintenance costs. From a transit perspective, this map that you'll see on your screen probably looks exactly like the current PSTA service because it is. We did not assume any new revenue for transit services aside from the additional capital funding that we set aside for bus replacements and regional services. It's about $344 million in capital funding and then about $1.63 billion in operating funding between now and 2045. In terms of unfunded needs, however, we did identify an additional $345 million in capital that is needed and $1.1 billion in operating costs that is needed between now and 2045 for the transit network that we believe we need in this county. I will point out that that cost does not include any service on the CSX corridor because it's just not far enough along in the planning process to determine those costs. And it also does not include any kind of premium inter-county service such as light rail across the Howard Franklin. That would be determined later and added in. However, we have adopted the policy that any additional funding for transit would be invested in these corridors that you see on the map right here. These are our transit investment corridors. These are the corridors that have been identified to have additional intensification and densification of redevelopment in the future. And in those areas is where we would want those additional transit dollars to go. So we showed you this graphic last month. This first one here shows when we asked the public how they wanted their transportation dollars invested, the public said, well, we want about 40% spent on bicycle, pedestrian, complete streets, and technology, 40% spent on transit, and about 20% on the roadways. This is where we ended up, with about 75% on the roadways, 15% on transit, and 10% on those other modes. This is because of the limitations that we had with the funding available to us. I will repeat that we did take about 100% of our most flexible funds and we put them on everything but roadway widening. So this graphic, 5 years ago when we adopted the 2040 long-range plan, would have been 0% and then the rest of the other modes. and this is roughly the cost. Don't do the math, there's a lot of rounding going in, so it won't equal these complete percentages, but just under $2 billion for roads, 420 for transit capital, and 260 million for those other modes. You did open the comment period at your meeting last month, so we had it out there for public comment. We have done so much public comment over the last 2 years. We did get a couple of additional comments though. There was a request for some better bus service. And then there was a question of someone wanting clarification on the scope of improvements to East Lake Road, but there were no major issues identified with the projects that we put forward for adoption. So for today's action, we're asking you to close the public comment period. And in the appendices, you'll notice there is a system performance report, there are goals, objectives, and policies, and then there's a cost feasible balancing table. We're asking today that you adopt the performance report and the cost feasible balancing table. And then we are going to continue to refine the documentation over the coming months. And we would like to bring you a final report no later than February with all of the documentation, excuse me, those goals, objectives, and policies refined, and then we'll ask you to endorse it at that time. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Is that all?
That's it.
That's
Wow.
4 years worth of work, right?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you. Are you going someplace fun for your vacation?
Yes, I am.
But she's not telling you where.
That's okay.
She's not
She
breaking
didn't tell me either.
Just a quick question, and it's coming up because, of course, some of the conversation that happened during citizen input, but back on the transit page that you had, it was all really referring to bus transportation.
For the existing, yes.
Where in here would be any future waterborne transportation? Because I see on that picture right there, there is a picture of a ferry.
Yes.
But from your presentation, all I see is roads. I don't see, to me, the intercoastal is kind of a roadway. It is a roadway. It's just a different type of roadway, so I don't see anything there.
Yes, and we did include the Cross Bay Ferry as a major regional service. But for something like, say, the intercoastal, our funding could provide for upgrades to dock facilities and things like that. It would not need to be identified on the map for that to happen. So we did not include the intercoastal routes.
So we've had this conversation. Waterborne transportation is included in the TMA funds that we have flexibility over. It's in a pot of money, and the MPO would be able to provide some sort of grants, and we're thinking through what that might look like in terms of like a grant application with a local government partner for that. But that's part of the TMA funds that Chelsea talked about. It's under the regional transportation component, and we recognize that waterborne transportation isn't always regional, but that's the placeholder where it sits today.
But wouldn't that still be a part of our overall long-range document?
Yes, it is, and it'll be discussed in the
Because
document.
it's not shown here.
Yeah, it's just really hard to show it a line on a map for exactly where that would go.
But I mean, it's not even mentioned on projects.
It is listed as that line item, that waterborne transportation is
What page is that on?
eligible. It would be on page,
I just went through the whole book and I didn't see it.
at the bottom of page 17, we talk about the various set-asides for different modes, and it's included under that. And then as we develop the more robust documentation for the plan, we will have a section specifically on waterborne transportation.
Regional
that'll
transit,
spell it
yeah,
out.
but when it is under regional transit capital investments, it then does appear like it's between our county and another county versus, various cities within our county. And I think that has to change. I mean, I think it has to be reflected, but what I don't want to do is lose the importance that we think this might bring in the future. I don't know how you document that, but even in your own presentation, there's no mention of it. You know what I'm saying? And I think I think it's a priority. We are a coastal county that has a number of communities along the coast. We're trying to find alternative ways to do transportation, and I think waterborne transportation is a part of that. It's not the thing to end all things, I just feel like it needs to be on these maps as a possibility, even if it's just a star underneath the map that says future waterborne, transportation.
Yeah. I think that's a good observation. We had this interesting conversation at our TMA meeting last week about what's a regional project. There were some discussions about rail from the university to downtown Tampa, for instance. There was discussions about our BRT that we're talking about from downtown St. Petersburg to the beach as all not, they're more community-centric, but yet they're part of an overall system that makes it regional.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I think the intercoastal could be considered that as well, but at the same time, it needs to be more, maybe brought out more in our plan. So
yeah, and I think just one more thing to say as we move forward, waterborne transportation is something to hopefully lessen congestion. That's the idea for it, right? And yes, employees will use it in certain instances, but it is also, as we've seen in our reports from Visit St. Pete Clearwater, 90% of people who are coming here are coming with their cars. If we can get them here without a car, we need to provide them with ways, especially if they're visitors, to get around and get them off of our roads and get them onto a different mode of transportation. So while we focus, rightly so, our transportation on things like jobs and 20-minute walkable neighborhoods and all of those things, those are important. We can't forget these opportunities where we can get our valuable visitors off the road so that the rest of us who live here can have quality of life and get where we need to go.
yeah, and back to that plan that the county administrator and Witt are talking about, if you've seen it, and you've brought it up before, and I brought it up yesterday at our county commission meeting, of using tourism as a key component when you're looking at our transportation planning, because it means a whole lot of things. And so, to your point about intercoastal waterway usage and that kind of thing, I think it's an important component we have to take into account, because we get a 1.5 million visitors a month on our roads, or a little over 1 million, added to what we have already is almost doubling that. So that has to be really a focus of all of our planning. I know it is, but maybe it needs to come out a little bit more. I don't know how you can.
I keep preaching.
So,
Mayor
Hold that thought as we-
Johnson gets a gold star today, just letting you know that up front. Because we have been talking about it. We've sat down with, trying to get a route from Dunedin Clearwater, which you started, and then to the Bel Airs, Indian Rocks Beach, and maybe Indian Shores to begin it. And trying to find funding through FDOT to help us, which, they have many times come to the table, but it's also Clearwater ferry, or some ferry has to stand up, step up and also be a part of the proposal and how they can make it work. As you've seen in the paper, specifically in coming off the Bel Air Causeway, the congestion problem that we have there, we do feel that if some of the residents as well as the tourists had the opportunity on the weekends to grab the ferry instead of driving their cars. And we do have locations that we can actually park in those strategic places that we think that we could make it work. And I don't know how I'm going to meet with the boss next week, so we'll be back at the table again, but I'm glad FDOT's here so that they hear this conversation, and that the rest of, or it seems like some of the people that are on Fort Pinellas are really interested in putting forth that this could be another way to help with the congestion on Gulf Boulevard, and also West Bay Drive coming over the Bel Air Causeway. Thank you.
Later. Yes.
Well, we actually did meet with Tricia from the Clearwater Ferry, and we did the tour and everything, and it just died because of funding.
Right.
And, so yes, that we do need a group effort to work on this, because I think it is so important to have another alternative, especially, and you know, you feel the pain on this, Mayor, on the weekends of that bridge just backing up all the way up to 20th, you know, for just to try and get across, and everybody's, you know, just going in one place at one time. And I think it would help alleviate a little bit of it, not everything, because I think our tourism is building. So, but a little relief would definitely be welcome.
Yeah. Well, I really commend them for their business model that has worked really well for them. And of course, they would be very careful to expand until they see the market support their business plan. So I like that kind of sound fiscal, you know, and getting people used to it, getting people on it to try it. You can't go from doing nothing to sprinting. You know, it's almost like we've got to figure out ways to get people to try the different forms of transit that we're talking about. So I agree with the comments that have been made. I just think we have to be careful. You know, the residents they'll let us know when they're ready for it. I mean, we may think that we're ready for it, but, you know, to actually use it is a whole different thing. So I think we continue to press and continue to probe where we can, but be careful as we expand too, I think is important. But yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chelsea. I can only imagine the different things that you had to balance in putting a report like this together. So your expertise and your mastery of this has been well noted. So thank you very much. I think this was a slide or two back. Maybe I didn't quite catch this, but I thought I heard you say, so does this include 1.8 billion for roads and 420 million for transit?
Correct.
Funded?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to figure out how
Actually, 344 million for transit.
344 million? Okay. I was just trying to figure out how we get to transit, because I know there's the 1.5 million annually for capital, for bus replacement.
Yes.
And then there's the $500,000 a year for the regional transit. So, you know, what other, because that's 40 million total, so what else?
In addition to that, on page 22, there's a breakdown of all of the different revenues provided by PSTA, including fare revenue, other revenue, ad valorem, federal and state grants.
Okay.
So we added those all together to get that number.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I just also want to thank you for putting our complete streets in St. Petersburg on 9th Street North, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Street North. Thank you for putting this on the cover. This was a
Cost
big.
a little bit more to St. Petersburg. I'm kidding.
Your staff already has copies of all the
It's coming out of
photos.
our funds. Okay, great. We did just recently get some, Evan Morey just shared with me that we did get some positive data that measured over a 24-hour period, that it shows that driving south, we're only losing about 7 seconds compared to driving north. That's a 24-hour period, probably a little bit more when there's a rush hour, but so far the numbers are bearing out that this commitment to the lane elimination has been a good move, and that is what enabled us to put in bike lanes and to help narrow the lanes to slow down traffic. So, thank you.
Any other, yes, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm beating the dead horse. Page 16, 62nd Avenue, I was hopeful that it was going to raise up on there, and for us not to have to wait another 6+ years to get it done. So I was hopeful between Kent County Commission and the Forward Pinellas group that they would see that this was more important than 6 years out, for another 6 years of people having problems traversing that area, especially with the growth of the community. The map that you had up showing
The growth is right smack in the middle of the county, which includes 62nd Avenue and the Lealman area.
And as you might have seen in Nancy's presentation, the preliminary engineering for that project is actually funded in 2020. So things can always change in the next couple of years.
I hope so.
Yeah, and I don't think we've had the full presentation yet from county about the proposed use of county funds for Penny. Is that right? I mean, yeah, so.
Can't comment on that.
Anybody here?
Correct, we just had our public meeting on November 5th, so we'll be going to the board.
Yeah, so, yeah, so we still have.
Bowley
time.
Center's investing in property off of 62nd and 66th Street, as well as Habitat for Humanities, so it is important and, for us to be able to have the diversity of bikes and walking and everything is extremely important in that community.
I'm sure it will be discussed. Yes, Commissioner.
Didn't we discuss last month that there was a sidewalk component that was going forward?
The sidewalk component on that project is actually west of 49th Street, between 49th and 66th. This project right here is from 49th Street over to US 19.
Okay, separate part of it.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Kind of a question, but it's really more of a comment. The, going off of what Councilmember Rice mentioned about the $1.5 million for capital bus replacements. I was off of this board for a gap of time, but I know before I left, this organization was, or this board was adamantly against funding bus replacements. And so to see that as a part of this, I think, coming back on the board, even though I've been here for almost a year, I think is a huge swing and a huge change, and we should acknowledge that as so many other MPO organizations support their local bus and transit agencies. So I just wanted to commend the board on their forward thinking for that. And thank you for your hard work.
Great point.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Chelsea. I do have a couple of folks that would like to speak. Karen Schwartz. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi there.
I've never addressed this group before. My name's Karen Schwartz. I live in Gulfport, and I am with the Citizens Advisory Committee of Ford Pinellas. And we of the CAC support the long-range plan. We think it's a good plan. We have reservations, much like the people on this on this board here. And it's all about transit. We know from the surveys that Chelsea presented that people really want transit. It's second only to fix the timing of the lights. The way that she developed her, it wasn't a pie chart, it was a line chart, that it would be nice to put 40% of the funding toward transit, but we don't. It's only 10%. Or no, it's only 15%. Anyway, we know that people want transit. They don't want more roads. And we know that money for transit is out there, that about $280 million has already been earmarked by the feds and by FDOT. But we don't have the local tax money to get those funds. We're leaving them on the table because we are not coming up with the funds to match it. And we don't even have to match it exactly. For every 25 cents Pinellas County puts toward public transit, FDOT contributes a quarter, and the federal government kicks in 50 cents. So to get that $280 million that's already available for us, we only need to contribute $70 million. You can't get that kind of return on investment anywhere else, where it's, a quarter and you get 75 cents back. And there's more. In terms of economic development, our $70 million plus the $280 million sitting on the table doing nothing right now stands to reap about 1.1 billion in economic returns, because every dollar invested in public transportation leads to about $4 in economic returns. Anyway, thank you for your time, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Karen, for your comments and for serving on the committee.
I'd just like to reference on item K, under item 8, 8K is a letter from the Citizens Advisory Committee, and Karen was one of the members of that group that drafted that letter. And I guess I'd like to ask the members of the subcommittee to stand who are here. Yeah, or stand or raise your hand. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And there are a few others there that would like to speak. So is Duncan Kovar here that would like to speak?
Yes, hi, and thanks for a chance to speak. There's 4 of us that serve on the Citizens Advisory for Forward Pinellas, and it's really been my honor, month in, month out, to get the briefings from Chelsea, from Whit, from the whole planning gang to see this develop. And as such, I'd like to advocate that you guys pass it and then over time work to amend it. They've done a lot of work on it. I support the letter. I was on the working committee that passed it, and the group, of course, voted on it. But I'd like personally to come and speak for myself that I live in Safety Harbor, for the record, Mid-County. That transportation, remind you, is about moving people, about supporting commerce, and about making everybody's life enjoyable. Neighborhoods and kids and parks, that's what, it's transportation. It's not about, it's about moving people. The trouble that we have is that FDOT gets their money from gas and from tolls, and so it sort of perverts the whole process. And so we start measuring things in terms of cars. How many cars did we move? How many tolls can we charge? And so that's what I think happens, is that we're at the bottom of a wrong process. If you have a wiggly table, no matter how much shims you put on it, it's still going to be a wiggly table. And so I was hoping you guys would go one step further beyond this plan, and as commissioners and mayors and as board members, that we would go back to the legislative group that go to Tallahassee for us and advocate that FDOT change the way they look at measurements, change the way they look at their funding sources, and that Florida is becoming more and more urban, that maybe Pinellas and Hillsborough come together and we join up with Miami-Dade, we join up with Duval, we join up with Orange and Seminole and say the money is going the wrong place. We have money right now to run freeways through farmlands, toll roads through farmlands to build sprawl, but we don't have money for improving transit to move people, not cars, people, not tolls. We want to move people because people give us commerce. So by the way, someone says, I'm thinking of moving to Florida. Where should I move? Should I move into Pinellas? No, I can't move around there. It's just a big parking lot. Oh, but if I move out in the hinterlands, we got a brand new freeway. And that's what FDOT's doing. It is ruining our state. And we need our legislatures, which, by the way, if all of the newly urbanized counties get together, we can have the tail wag the dog and get the way FDOT funds itself and then distributes it down to us. I think what Chelsea's done, what Whit, all the group has done is wonderful with the wrong funding process. They have done a great job. We've watched it come up, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you also for your service, Duncan. Appreciate it. Gloria Lepic Corrigan.
It's okay, we need 10 voices on transit.
There you go.
Hey, Gloria. Good to see you. Welcome.
How are you? Yeah, you all have heard me talk transit stuff before. And now on the CAC, I found that most of us on the CAC are very dedicated to this. And it was really clear as we were looking at the funding sources from FDOT, how it's all built on a very old-fashioned model of the way that things were done. And the way that, as we saw, the consumer, our citizens are looking for a more modern, a more current view of how to structure our communities. I just came from a meeting on Complete Streets for Clearwater also, and everyone again was talking transit, and we're talking sidewalks, and we're talking about moving people in different ways than just all car-centric. And so again, with what Karen and what Duncan just said to you, our whole subcommittee of the CAC felt very strongly about this, that we are hopeful that you all can reach out to try to change the shape of how things are done and help the funding fund the right things. Thank you.
Thanks, Gloria. And thanks for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Karen Mullins.
I'm so grateful that Duncan went first because he nailed it on the head. We're moving people, and we're not doing it very effectively right now. I know Karen Seal had a vision for US 19, and it's come to fruition for the most part. I can't wait for Curlew to get on board. Looking forward to that. But now we're at a crossroads. We're at a place where we're going to lose companies, lose new economic benefits to other areas if we're not putting our money into transit. We need to get our Pinellas legislative delegation on board. I'm asking for the county commission to be on board to look for new avenues for transit dollars. Capital is easy to get for transit. Maintenance and operations is not. That's our sticking point. We can get capital. I mean, it's not as easy as one might think, but capital is much easier to fund than it is for operations. We need people to get from point A to point B. We are here manufacturing. We are here service people. And for the most part, we're looking at attainable housing way up in Pasco County. We need attainable housing here. We need transit here. Take the load off the people here so they can stay here, stay in our community. Give them transit in return. Give them a way to get to work. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I think that's one of the nice things about the Advantage Pinellas plan is that we have kind of linked land use planning with transportation and with transit and trying to put it all under kind of one thinking process. And of course, as the plan is laid out there, there will be opportunities to amend it as we go forward. Thank you also, Karen, for your service. Mike Reardon.
When you're done, I have a question.
Okay. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Mike Reardon. I didn't actually come to talk on this, but if I heard it right, where'd she go? She's going on vacation already?
She's in a rush, but she's way.
You're going to Clearwater Beach, right?
I don't think so.
If I heard it right, or Dudnin, if I heard it right, $300 million was left on the table because it requires matching funds. And this is probably would open up a hornet's nest, but collectively, if the various municipalities and the unincorporated county pooled funds together for key priority projects, which I would like to see this board prioritize with, probably if you know me now, it's based on, safety issues as opposed to getting tourists faster to the beach. But if collectively, St. Pete, the biggest city, Clearwater, Largo, the smaller municipalities, say they all came together and said, well, none of us could get some matching funds together to get 50 million to get 100 million. But collectively, if you'd come up with 300 million, that would have turned into 600 million. I don't even know if it's legal or not for you to all find out. But collectively, if this body can pull the municipalities together and the county to pull funds together and not leave $300 million on the table that could be turned into 6. And while you're at it, get the legislator to change the bed tax so we're not giving away 60% to tourist promotion. Cut that to 20. That's another day. But collectively, I don't know if that's even been thought of. Maybe it has, maybe it's not legal. But when I heard 300 million left on the table, it bothered me, so I put another card in. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other comments on this Advantage Pinellas plan? Okay, Commissioner Seal, did you have a comment or question?
I wanted to make sure that the Citizens Advisory Committee has heard what T-BARTA's been doing lately between the regional transit study as well as the $1 million that Commissioner Lung helped to advocate for alternative technologies.
We have talked to
Because-
them about that. I think their concern is that it was sparked by a presentation on the Florida Transportation Plan.
Right.
Which they viewed as mostly oriented to highways and not much attention given to transit in the development of the Florida Transportation Plan, which is just beginning. So that was really the impetus for them wanting to write this letter. But yes, we have let them know about the work that TBARTA is doing. I think ultimately, though, it comes back to their issue in the letter, which is we're going to need to commit resources to operate anything that even TBARTA advances, whether it's the 41-mile BRT or something else. So I think that's
I
more.
just want to make sure that they
yeah.
were knowledgeable about all the projects that are coming in the pipeline. They all come with some, I think, some fairly bold moves in the future, so.
Okay.
I just wanted to say.
You have to
Yes,
come
come on
up,
up,
Karen,
Karen.
if you have.
I just wanted to follow up that we have representation
Hold on,
from
hold
Hold
on. I want to capture your voice.
those
so-
thoughts.
Hi, Karen Mullis. We have representation from Forward Pinellas on the CAC, TBARTA CAC board, so we are getting that information and we're bringing it back. Bill Johnson makes a report to us.
I just want to make sure that you all, because I haven't seen your agenda, got regular reports about
Yes,
what's.
Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Karen.
Okay, thanks.
Mr.
Okay, yes,
Chair,
Commissioner.
I also would like to emphasize what has already been said here, but just a little more strongly, that, for having actually served on transportation and economic development in the legislature, I can share with you that the funding for transportation has not changed in 50 years in terms of the way they look at funding projects and the length of time that it takes. What isn't being considered is the advances in technology, which are coming along so quickly that the funding formulas that are used today cannot possibly keep up with what the opportunities might be in the next 5, 6, or 7 years. And it will really take an act of the legislature, and I would venture to say that one of them should ask for an OPAGA study on this very issue to figure out exactly how to move forward and change that process. Because if somebody doesn't start that at some point pretty soon, we're never going to be able to get on top of it. Okay. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
What's an OPAGA study?
I'm sorry?
What is an OPAGA study?
It's a special little group within the legislature that is responsible for studying the kinds of things that are complicated, require a lot of research, and
So it's a subcommittee of the legislature that looks at things.
only the legislature, a legislator, are the only folks that can ask for one to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or
It
questions?
stands for Office of Policy and Government Analysis.
Commissioner.
That is impressive, because I was going to ask you what the acronym stood for.
Yeah,
was
I
good.
had to think
Impressive.
about it. It's been a while.
I just wanted to say, this is a culmination of a lot of work and the vision of bringing, planning and transportation together. And so I just wanted to thank staff and all the partners and the advisory committees on this. A couple of things, one thing we always hear back from the legislature and the feds is that we need to do more locally. And we're hearing today how much we're missing, to the gentleman from Clearwater, in terms of not having that local funding. So we are making progress in that direction. We received a great presentation from the county administrator. Whit was there as well yesterday on potential ways to deal with that. So I'm optimistic about that going forward. And I did also want to support Mayor Bradbury and her comment about 62nd Avenue and 22nd. I think we still have a chance to address that. Chelsea, these have the county as a primary funder, so when we go through that discussion that Commissioner Eggers talked about, we still have a chance to address those too, correct? So I will definitely be carrying that message forward, Mayor Bradbury.
Thank you, sir.
But in the big scheme of things, this is a really positive plan, and a lot of great work went into it, and I'm excited about it. So just
It's
thank
very
you.
informative.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
A lot of discussion going on with transportation and transit in the past, probably decade, the past 5 years, and certainly with this plan. And there'll be a whole lot more between now and the first quarter of next year as discussions about transportation, transit, additional funding that we're talking about, shortfalls here, and how that all translates to a referendum on that item, an additional funding source. So whether it's a quarter, half, or a whole penny, whichever you're talking about, there will be discussions and opportunities for residents to weigh in. We're already hearing that they're weighing in, but it's one thing to weigh in that's about something. It's another thing to say, yeah, you can raise taxes, and people are speaking out for that. So just know that we're going to have lots of opportunity to talk about this issue as it relates to us implementing this long-range plan going forward. So stay tuned on that. So yes.
Can I just say something real quick? I just want to comment a little bit about the Florida Department of Transportation, who has been a great partner in the development of this plan, and we really appreciate their efforts. We are a little hamstrung with statewide policy and how we deal with transportation in an urban county like Pinellas County. The other arterials program, one of the limits we have that I think Chelsea covered is that the money is typically limited to capacity and operational improvements on state roads. We just don't have too many capacity projects anymore on state roads since they've gotten Ulmerton done and Gateway Expressway under construction. US 19, we still have a few more things to do there, but it's moving along well. And I-275, of course. I think our issue is that being able to convert some of the other arterials program dollars to, say, parallel roads to state facilities that might be under the county jurisdiction or a city jurisdiction, that does require a 50-50 match. And that's where we're needing some additional resources to bring those dollars fully into Pinellas County, not send them back somewhere else to the state. Also, roads like Ulmerton Road, which were designed with a 5-foot bike lane, that's not really consistent with today's standard. And if we wanted to go back in and add a project to, say, put in a buffered 7-foot bike lane on Ulmerton Road with protections from passing cars, we can't use other arterial program funds for that. We have to go to highway safety improvement funds, show a record of crashes and fatalities, or we have to go to our transportation alternatives program, and that's got very limited dollars. So that's, I think, where our rub is with FDOT, and they acknowledge it. It's really more of a statewide issue, and then you've got this district that might be advocating for what we're advocating, but they might be running up against other districts that are happy with the status quo and how things are going. So I do think the legislature has a role to play in all this. Our public transit block grant program, which is a big funding source for PSTA, dates to 1990, 1989, and it has not changed in really any substantial way. Since then, we've changed a lot as a state since 1989. So just to reinforce the points that are, I think, well articulated in item 8K of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and just to thank FDOT for really being a great partner in helping us develop this plan and work with us as we advance projects around Pinellas County. I think they are being sensitive to our needs and our issues.
Yes, Mayor, now I'm going to get that, we really have to kind of move this along, but yeah, you have a closing comment?
I do.
Go ahead.
So because I know we're getting ready to, assuming we're going to approve this, could we approve this and ask you to tweak your language on the waterborne transportation? And we don't need to see it and reapprove it, just understanding the comments that you've heard?
Yeah, I think that's fair. The line item that's in the plan acknowledges waterborne transportation, but I think if you could emphasize that with a motion, that it needs to be prominently featured in the plan, or however you want to say that, then we would be happy to incorporate that.
I think you've heard our comments. Okay, then I would move approval with the addition of more language on waterborne transportation.
Move approval of the adoption of Advantage Pinellas Plan 2045 long-range plan, right?
Yes, sir.
With that?
With additional language supporting waterborne transportation.
I'll second.
Okay, any closing comments before we take a roll call?
Mayor Bajowski?
Aye.
Commissioner Sofer?
Aye.
Councilmember Albritton?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Rice?
Aye.
Commissioner Welch?
Aye.
Commissioner Seal?
Aye.
Mayor Bradbury?
Aye.
Commissioner Long?
Aye.
And Commissioner Eggers?
Aye, and that motion carries unanimously. And again, I think there's a lot of kudos that were thrown around this today, and please understand how deeply grateful we are for the work of our staff, our partnership with FDOT, and all of the communities that are represented around this dais for coming up with a really awesome, inclusive plan going forward. And to the CAC and all of those folks, please, thank you for your service again. Okay, we're going to move into the Pinellas Planning Council part of the meeting, and as always, I know you guys like to hear this reading every month, but you're going to get it again. And we're going to start the PPC public hearings right now, and I'll ask the Forward Pinellas staff to present the items that we have. We have 3 of those today, all planning amendments. I will ask that do that, desiring to address their items. Once these reports are given, I will ask for proponents of the proposals and then opponents and any other citizens who want to comment on any of the cases, whether they're sub-threshold or threshold amendments. We will then hear rebuttal by the applicants as necessary and a staff response. At that time, the board will ask questions, and I'll close the public hearing. We'll deliberate and take action. So, welcome. Good to have you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Jared Austin for Pinellas. I'll be going over case CW 1921 submitted by the City of Largo. The City of Largo is seeking to amend a portion of property from public semi-public to residential low-medium, and the purpose of this amendment is to allow for the church parsonage to be converted to a single-family dwelling unit. The location is at 3093 Meadowview Avenue and 380 Fulton Drive Southeast. The area size is roughly 0.39 acres, and the existing uses are institutional with surrounding uses of residential and institutional. Here you can see the front of the subject property. This is some of the residential to the north of the subject property. This is the church to the east of the subject property. And this is some more of the residential to the south of the subject property. Here you can see the current category of public semi-public, which under our countywide land use category does support the use of residential uses. However, the local land use that falls under our public semi-public category does not. Hence the proposed change to residential low-medium, which would better support the redevelopment of this parsonage into a single-family dwelling unit. In conclusion, we believe that the proposed amendment is appropriate for the intended purpose and is consistent with the locational characteristics for the residential low-medium category. And on balance, we believe it can be concluded that the proposed amendment is consistent with the relevant countywide considerations contained in Section 6531 of the countywide rules. Just some information on public comments. During the Largo Planning Board meeting, there were 3 citizens who commented on this case. Comments were from adjacent property owners who expressed concern over illicit activities on the abutting Cross Point Church property, future plans of the church, and inquired about allowable residential uses on the subject property. We were notified by City of Largo staff that in regards to illicit activities, there were no actual police reports that documented such activity. With that, that's it for CW 1921.
Okay. Are there any questions for Ross? So public hearing, if there's anybody who'd like to come forward and speak to this item. Okay, seeing none, I bring it back to the commission for action.
Move approval.
Second.
You got those? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5E2.
So this is case CW 1922 submitted by the City of Largo as well. And in this case, the City of Largo is seeking to amend a property from office, retail and services, and target employment center overlay to retail and services and target employment center overlay. And the purpose of this amendment is to establish a single unifying land use classification for the site while recognizing existing uses at that location. So the location is at 5555 Roosevelt Boulevard. The area size is roughly 3.3 acres. The existing uses are retail and commercial, and the surrounding uses are office. Here you can see the front of the subject property. This is some of the office to the north of the subject property. And this is Roosevelt just to the south of the subject property. Here you can see the current subject property, which is bisected by both the the office and the retail and services category. Hence the proposed change to the retail and services category that would unify the existing land use that at a local level falls under the commercial general category. And in conclusion, we believe that the proposed amendment is appropriate for the intended purpose and is consistent with the locational characteristics for the retail and services and target employment center overlay categories. And on balance, we believe that it can be concluded that the proposed amendment is consistent with the relevant countywide considerations contained in section 6531 of the countywide rules. And there were no public comments for this case.
Okay, any questions? Okay, anybody from the audience that would like to speak to this item? Okay. We'll bring it back to the commission, or the council
to
here
approve.
for approval.
Second.
Get- Commissioner Mayor Bradbury, excuse me.
Second.
Mayor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on to the third case, please.
All right, this is CW 1923, again submitted by the City of Largo. So the City of Largo is seeking to amend a property from residential low medium to public semi-public. And the purpose of this amendment is to allow for the expansion of the Lake House Assisted Living Facility, which is located on an adjacent property. The location is at 1651 McMullen Road, and the area size is roughly 2.16 acres. The existing uses are vacant residential, excuse me, and the surrounding uses are residential and institutional. This is just the front of the subject property. This is the actual assisted living facility to the west of the subject property. And this is a church facility to the east of the subject property. So here you can see the current category of residential low medium. However, given the proposed use of assisted living facility in the current category that encompasses that assisted living facility of public semi-public, hence the proposed change to the public semi-public category. In conclusion, we believe that the proposed amendment is appropriate for the intended purpose and is consistent with the locational characteristics for the public semi-public category. And on balance, we believe it can be concluded that the proposed amendment is consistent with the relevant countywide considerations contained in section 6531 of the countywide rules. In regards to public comments, during the Largo Planning Board meeting, there were 10 citizens who commented on this case. Comments varied from residents of the adjacent Lake House assisted living facility, children of the parents who reside in the assisted living facility, and property owners within 500 feet of the subject property. According to Largo staff, major concerns were with the view from the adjacent lake, buffering, and the view of a generator and dumpster on the adjacent assisted living facility site, but not the subject property itself. And with that, that's it for CW 19.
Any questions for Jared? I've asked for public comment, the other two cases. I did have a card from a Robert Cannon. Is he still here? I am, but it was for the first case. I know, and that's what I'm reaching out to apologize to you. I did ask for if there was anybody, but I forgot to call on you. Did you have anything? Okay. Again, my apologies. We do have a comment here from Todd Pressman. Todd?
Good afternoon, Todd Pressman, 200 2nd Avenue South in St. Petersburg. I'm representing the applicant on this. I did want to clarify that at the planning board meeting, we did have residents there. The applicant had then followed up with the neighbors and put together a landscape plan, worked out what their issues were, and there were no negative comments to the city commission. The city commission approved it, so we're moving ahead. So we're very well engaged with them. We'll be engaged with them again. We have to do a conditional use, but the applicant is very reactive and address those concerns. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Todd? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this item? Okay, bringing it back to the council. Move approval.
Second.
Okay, who's?
Michael Smith.
You were the first, and who was the second? Oh, okay. Did you get him? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move into our presentation on some items here, and, just like clockwork, in comes Commissioner Long to talk about PSTA.
Oh,
Do you want me to
Are we
go
going
to
T-Barta
T-Barta
first?
first? Or you?
no, I'm ready.
Okay, go.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, the PSTA leadership recently celebrated their 2018 graduating class of leadership PSTA, and that's the second class of 6 very high potential employees that have been selected from across the agency to improve their leadership knowledge and skills, as well as work in a cross-functional team to improve the agency. The agency is excited about the program because it demonstrates the value that PSTA has for its employees, as well as the culture of growth and collaboration that's shared across the agency. At our October meeting, the board ratified our new contract with our largest collective bargaining unit, SEIU, which is comprised of our operators, mechanics, and customer service representatives. So it's 460 out of 600 positions. In this contract, we'll be able to work with the union to achieve hourly wage and other changes that will hopefully help us attract new employees to the industry, which is nationally experiencing a shortage due to the low unemployment rate. We have raised starting wages to $13 an hour for all employees and $15 an hour for bus operators, $17 an hour for mechanics. We've also added educational opportunities for people who are seeking advanced degrees that match with activities at PSTA in transportation, and the agreement is within our adopted budget for the upcoming year. Our next board meeting is on Wednesday, December 5th at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Commissioner Long. Any questions for
Welcome.
Commissioner Long? Okay.
Just a comment that the leadership PSTA is a good idea.
It is a good idea.
is.
Yeah, it gives people a career path and something to strive for, and the employees are really, really excited about it.
And it gives them an opportunity to see how the other
Yep.
fingers, and toes of the arm work and
Yeah.
how it has to be all running
We've
together.
also sent several employees to the nationally acclaimed American Public Transit Association's leadership designation that they have, and it has positioned those folks that have graduated from it for terrific opportunities in other transit agencies throughout the United States. Not that we want to lose them, but it's all about, growing our staff.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Seal,
Okay.
T-Barta report.
T-Barta. We had our meeting on Friday, October 25th in Pasco County. We passed unanimously a $7.5 million operating budget for fiscal year 2020, which also includes commuter services program. We approved a contract to Agile Mile for ride matching platform. And that annual amount is $240,000. That's funded by federal grant dollars. What I mentioned earlier, which I really want to emphasize, is the $1 million appropriation that I mentioned for innovative technologies. We have approved a task work order to WSP USA Inc. To complete a high-level feasibility study of Hyperloop, aerial gondolas, and air taxis. The cost of this is almost $221,000 of the $1 million grant. Scott Pringle from WSP gave a progress report on the Regional Rapid Transit, PD&E. Basically, they're looking at station locations, and they went from 21 locations down to possibly 12 or 13. And then finally, we had a transit-oriented development presentation from a young woman from USF about best case practices, and our next meeting is scheduled for November 15th, 2019 at Tampa International Airport. After that meeting, we're having an Envision workshop.
Thank you, Commissioner Seal. Any questions for Commissioner Seal? Okay, thank you.
Okay, no, it's okay. I just wanted to.
We're going to move on to a countywide trends and conditions report, and Robert Feigl coming up. Hello, Robert. Welcome.
Robert Feigl for Pinellas. And today we're going to go ahead and present the countywide trends and conditions report. This report is a broad overview of the trends and conditions in Pinellas County from approximately 2014 to 2018. The report covers infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, crash data, and as well as land use data, and is really the tip of the iceberg. The databases, level service and crash databases that feed into this report, I think it's noteworthy that those databases are also available to local governments and are used year-round by Forward Pinellas consultants and our local governments in various reports and studies.
And Robert, I'm glad to see that you have added in 2017 for the mayor, down at the far end down there, that waterborne transportation is one of the
Absolutely, we do include waterborne transportation in the report as one of the trends.
Thanks, Robert.
Decisions at the local level affect greatly whether or not the development of land use and transportation results in pictures that are more like those to the left of the slide or those on the right. As an example of the nexus between land use and transportation, we can take a look at the relationship between density with regard to housing units per acre, and that relationship, the relationship with density. So the less density, the less support there is for transit. 73% of our households are currently with 7.5 units per acre, which is not supportive of transit. 13% of our households, the slide on the right, or the photo on the right, are 7.5 to 10 units per acre. At this point, we begin to be able to support local bus service, as an example. The trend on this is that was 12% 2 years ago, so that is sort of trending in the right direction with regard to areas that are more supportive for public transit. In the category of 10 to 30 units per acre, 12% of the households in Pinellas County are currently in that category. That supports frequent bus service, and the trend on that is that that's about a 1% increase over the past 2 years. And then the photograph on the right, more than 30 units per acre, that's at 2% of households in Pinellas County, and at that level, it can support premium transit. The trend on that is that there's not been an increase over the last couple of years, but we'll keep an eye on that going forward. Visually, this is what it would look like, the map to the right. I know that's hard to see, but just generally, that shows those same categories that we just went over, with the lighter color blue being sort of like the single-family house and the lower density areas. And then the darker the blue is those areas that are greater density, greater than 30 dwelling units per acre, and would support premium transit. So having options going forward as we have an increasing number of people moving to Pinellas County, it's important to have options such as transit for transportation to help take cars off the road and reduce congestion. And it's also important to have good infrastructure for pedestrians and bicyclists. In Pinellas County, over the past few decades, we've done a great job of planning and constructing trails. As you see, almost 80% of the Pinellas Trail Loop is completed. So that's up from 76% last year. 43 trail miles have been added since 2013. That's up from 38 this time last year. And the more trails we build, the more we have houses that are within easy walking distance to those trails. So 1 out of every 3 households are within easy walking distance to a trail. And so That's up from 29% this time last year, so that's trending in the right direction. Although in Pinellas County, the travel time to work is has increased a little bit since 2010. It's still better than the numbers for statewide, for Florida, or for the United States as a whole. 79% of residents are still driving alone to work, but the general trend on that is that's down 1%, so it was 80% last year, so that's trending in the right direction. And nearly 7% work from home, which is slightly more than it was this time last year. With more cars on the road, there's more crash. The population in Pinellas County has increased about 4% between 2014 and 2018. The volume of traffic has increased between 4 to 5% during that same time period. So probably not a big surprise that the number of crashes have increased about that same percentage, a little bit less actually. So what these numbers are, 29,000 crashes, that's how many crashes we have in Pinellas County on average per year. Of that 29,000 crashes, on average, we have 114 fatalities per year. And the number of injuries actually have gone down to 4,400. Focusing for a moment on the fatalities, the vast majority of the fatalities, about 61%, involve our vulnerable road users, and those are the motorcyclists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Of the vulnerable users, bicyclists only have about 4%, only make up about 4% of the fatal crashes in Pinellas County. So I think that's noteworthy. The vast majority of the fatal crashes involving our vulnerable road users are with motorcyclists and pedestrians. So nearly 1 out of 4 fatal crashes involve motorcycles, and I believe it's about 1 out of every 3 fatal crashes involve pedestrians. The next slide at the top, that should be 2014 to 2018. This shows your usual suspects when it comes to the fatal crashes. So impairment, whether it's drug or alcohol related, distracted driving, aggressive driving, and at-risk drivers are primarily involved for the most part in our fatal crashes. The group that's increased the most, 26% increase, has been distracted drivers. But having said that, they're only 6% of fatal crashes. So we'll see how the legislation sort of changes those numbers, as we move forward. Impairment and aggressive drivers continue to be by far the involved the most in fatal crashes. So again, that's a broad overview of the trends and conditions. We like to do that once a year to provide a county-wide view on how we're doing with regard to existing conditions, and it's worth repeating again that we do drill down a lot further in other studies, and a lot of the information that the databases that Ford Pinellas has and shares with the local governments. A lot of the information from that shows up on a regular basis, to this board and others, in the form of various reports and presentations. Whenever you hear about crash data, it's all kind of coming from the same source. So with that, we're looking to get board's approval of the countywide trends and conditions report, and with that, I can take any questions.
Robert, thank you. Nice report, and I know this is online on our website, right? Available
Yes, sir.
for residents if they want to take a look at the full report.
Yes,
It's
the
an
full-
excellent report, by the way, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mayor.
I have 2 questions. We're the most densely populated county in Florida, which would trend towards what the study was talking about as far as, alternative transportation, but yet we're not, as far as the numbers, Are we looking in comparison to other counties in the state of Florida that are the same size, same complex of the diversity that we have, to see what they're doing that we're not as far as the transportation? And my second question is, you said 1 out of 3 households are within walking distance of the trail?
Not necessarily the Pinellas Trail, but within walking distance of a trail, and that can include like the countywide network, so not just limited to the Pinellas Trail. That might include sidewalks actually as well.
I would think so.
Yeah.
No, I think it's trails, but it may be like Druid Trail or the Pinellas Trail, the Duke Energy Trail, or the North Bay Trail. It's not just sidewalks. It's a third of our population is within a half mile of a trail of some kind.
Those trails that you mentioned, none of them are in Pinellas Park.
No, that's a
And
whole.
we're 17 square miles, and our citizens don't have access to any of those within a walking distance.
That's why one of your corridors, 78th Avenue, is on our priority list.
Thank you,
And
Mayor.
we're
But I would
welcoming,
like to see a comparison of what, like Miami-Dade, they're big. I think they're a lot bigger than Pinellas County, I believe, as far as square miles. But they have transit down there in multiple different light rail, regular rail, buses and everything, and a monorail type of thing. What they're doing in comparison to what we're doing as far as where the funding's coming from, as well. I would like us to see us do something like that in comparison to some of the other counties.
So taking a look at
Yeah, we do that through the MPO Advisory Council primarily, and we have Florida Metropolitan Planning Partnerships meeting coming up in Orlando next month. So we do have a lot of opportunities to share knowledge and information with our peers around the state. So that's a good point, and we'll continue to look at those options. Miami-Dade did go to their voters and ask them to pass a sales tax to pay for transit improvements in 2003. And so they continue to have revenues coming in, maybe not at the levels they would like because they've had to make some hard choices, but that is a big part of how they're providing some of their transit services.
When we're bundling properties and building townhomes instead of single-family homes or condos or something like that, we're becoming more densely populated on purpose, yet that focus isn't there on the transportation end of it necessarily. So this is the reason why I was asking, what are they doing compared to what we're doing?
Another thought that came to mind was with regard to our Transportation Alternatives Program, if the city would like to construct a trail, for example, that may connect to other existing trails, I mean, that would provide residents with a lot more opportunities to not only use that trail locally within the city, but also, especially where it's connecting with other local trails and the Pinellas Trail, then they can go around the entire county. So that would open up a lot of opportunities. And
I know a lot of citizens in our community that literally drive to the Pinellas Trail to get on it for activity.
So I would welcome an application from the city for a transportation alternatives proposed project, bicycle pedestrian facility trail that could connect to some of the existing networks. And I think that would be great.
We have a current call for projects open right now.
Yes.
Mayor Bujalski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your report. Appreciate it. So, can we go back to slide 8, which talks about the travel time to work? There we go. Okay, so I just did a little math, because I was listening to what you said, and you said, yes, we've increased, but so has everybody else. But the U.S. has increased 4.8%. The state of Florida has increased 5.1%, and we've increased 6%. So we are trending at a higher rate of increase. Yes, we are increasing like everybody else. So I guess my question to everybody, and I'm sure you probably don't have a comprehensive answer, but you're talking about 2010, which a lot of us were serving in transit capacities in some way or another, to 2017. What's causing it, and what are we doing about it?
Couple things. I just, first, I think it's lower than everywhere else because we are a more compact county. The reason it may be increasing everywhere is that since 2010, we've had a remarkably good economy. Yeah. And so people are buying cars, they're buying bigger houses. when they can buy bigger houses in our situation, they're probably having to buy those houses in another county. So that's one of our housing challenges, is it's driving people further to do that. So that may be a factor in why we're at 6% versus, say, a 4% or a 3% increase.
And so, what are we doing about it, I guess, is my question. Is Advantage Pinellas supposed to be the answer to it?
Well, it's part of the answer. We are working with the county on an initial process of a countywide housing strategy.
I'm sorry, can you go back to that? I'm
I'm
still working on it.
I went to the what are we doing about it slide, sorry.
So we are working on a countywide housing strategy that's just getting started to look at that. The countywide plan amendments that you all recommended and the county commission adopted last month are also part of that strategy to enable people to live and work closer to where they are. So it's going to take some time.
Are you looking at tourism as well?
Tourism is
Looking
not.
at the increase of tourism.
Yeah, tourism is not
Logging
typically
up.
captured in travel time to work in minutes, but it's a factor. So yeah, the more tourism we have
Not
here.
that we're going to try to reduce tourism, but I mean, it should be, I mean, do you have further information on this where it breaks it down more than just what you're showing?
Yeah,
Kind of see, what years and,
or by year.
I don't know, just anything at this point. I'm not exactly sure what I'd be looking for, but
It's a needle in a haystack is what you're looking for, but there is a lot of data on journey to work, travel time, by means of transportation, by time of day, by city to county, county to county. Those kind of workflows are there.
if you can tell us even the individual communities, I mean, like, I'd like to know, as City of Dunedin is our people, their increase to travel time, is there something we can do on our local roads to help with that? I don't know. I mean, this is a really good thing to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it's a multiple-pronged approach to try to improve it. But it also is not just about the county, it's about us, is our cities and what are steps that we could possibly take at the local level to try to improve it. I just don't know how to determine that. So it's really in your hands, Whit, for you to tell us, well, this is some information we have that might affect your city, or...
I'll have to see what data we can drill
Okay.
down to the sub-geography level. Some of these trend data are only available at the countywide level, but or the urbanized area level, but there are, I used to teach the census a long time ago, and so there are some crosstabs that we can summarize for individual cities in Pinellas County.
Well, and I think it's important to note that, Greenlight Pinellas was supposed to be in election of 2014, was it? And, here we are. We've increased everybody's commute time and just can't vote on doing something to improve things. So I hope we keep trying to fix it. I'm hoping. And then can you, just one more thing, can you go to the crash instance? Which is like, yeah, that is very concerning. And I know you spoke to, safety things, and we're working on safety things in the Advantage Pinellas plan and all of those things. But there's also a law enforcement element to this. If we know this, we should be, even though we're on the transportation side, we should be communicating with law enforcement. And again, it comes down to the local level. Some communities have the sheriff, which works out well for the communication part, but then some communities have their own police department. And so I think if you can dig deeper into this really concerns me. This is huge. I mean, crash is up 3.6% over a 5-year time frame. Again, more people on the road, especially people that don't live here, don't know where they're going, and are confused when they're trying to cause those kinds of things, cause crashes. Our fatalities up 7%. That is, in 4 years, that's not anything I want to tell one of my constituents.
Yeah.
I want to know seriously what we're doing about those things, and not what we're doing 10 years from now, what we're doing right now, because that's a life-affecting thing.
Yeah. Last month, you all approved a Vision Zero initiative.
Yes.
And we've hired a consultant. We've had our kickoff meeting. So that's proceeding, and that will be directly focused on reducing these crashes and fatalities.
But anything you can give us at the local level.
Well, we're gonna have a presentation later, and I know Mike's here in the audience, and that picture is on the road that he's concerned about. Drew Street
Yes.
is a really dangerous road in Pinellas County. It goes from city of Clearwater to the city Pinellas, it's Florida road. There's a FDOT piece and a county piece.
Right.
And there is one.
That's where everybody's working
it's
together.
one of those dangerous roads that
Yeah.
we're talking about, really trying to ramp up
Yeah.
efforts locally to respond to some of these issues. And we're getting huge influx from Pasco County.
I know.
The amount of development that's going on 54, it's all residential. They have not upped their employment base as much as they had hoped so far. So they're still coming down here on
Right.
McMullen Booth. And so we've got issues there as well. So there's a multiplicity of reasons that,
So Whit, if you could just give us, if you can break that down a little bit more, tell us where there are concerns.
to the extent that it's available.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm, okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this plan? Thank you. Really, really good stuff. And again, if folks are watching, this is available online at forwardpinellas.com. Do I have a motion for approval of this?
So move.
Motion.
Where was it?
Susie.
Susie? And then
Second.
Councilmember Rice, the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank
Okay.
you. Hopefully I wasn't beating you up.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, Jensen, you're due back up here for some more FDOT presentations.
They are?
And I'm sure all presenters realize the hour is upon us, so let's, we'll move as quickly as we can.
Yeah, it's all
And
downhill.
doing good work, by the
Placing
way,
the old
but.
people.
At the beginning of the meeting, you had the timer on the presenters and it stopped, so.
I had it going here.
Anything is not like it used to
On the
be.
presenters, I didn't mean the presenters.
It was going off for the presenters at the beginning.
Well, I don't time the dais,
Just there.
questioners, so we have to be careful with that. So go ahead.
This one will be quick, I promise. Jensen Hackett again, CFC. Last month, I came to the board and presented on the draft tentative work program for fiscal years 21 through 25 from the Florida Department of Transportation. When I presented that, that was the draft form of our tentative work program. Since then, it has become the tentative work program, which is what we take to the legislature coming up in January because it is an accelerated cycle this year. I am just here to report that there were no changes to any of those projects that I presented on in the tentative work program. So that presentation you got was essentially what we are sending to the legislature come January. So here was just to let you know about that. Any MPO objections are due on November 18th. So you still have time for the MPO to come forth with any objections that you might have that are due to us. I believe it's next Monday, the 18th. So.
Move approval.
Second.
I have before we vote, I just have a couple of comments, if I may. One is I want to commend DOT for bringing in the funding for the West Shore interchange, which was our #1 priority and the #1 priority for the region. And I think we led all the counties and the MPOs in stating that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secondly, I don't know if the board, we do have an opportunity to send comments by the 18th.
Correct.
And there were some deferrals in your report, particularly for US 19. Those are statewide SIS deferrals. And I didn't know if the board wanted to authorize me to draft any kind of a letter and commenting on some of those deferrals. While we're happy with West Shore and 275, and we appreciate other projects the department has advanced, that is a longstanding priority. So I just wanted to see if you wanted to authorize that as part of the motion.
I would.
I figured.
Yeah.
Is that?
So that would be a motion at the appropriate time to add on to the approval of this. And is there
Agreed.
a second that? Okay, so we'll add that on to that motion. Is that okay with the maker and the seconder? Whoever that was?
It was.
It's okay with you then? And?
And Commissioner Sue.
Okay. But that was it, that was an add-on, right?
An amendment to the
Okay.
approval.
So the maker and the original maker?
They're both in agreement.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for keeping me straight.
And just as a quick comment on that, I know Commissioner Seal, for last month, you had the concerns of that, and the Secretary got up and spoke to you on that behalf. The right-of-way was not deferred on those projects. It was just the construction due to that funding. So as soon as we get a chance, if the Revenue Conference does find revenue on this, we will look to move those projects back in. They're still in that 10-year SIS work program plan, so you're good on that side.
I know I'm meeting with some folks on Friday about US 19. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. We understand some of the issues and why monies have been diverted to other parts of the state. But we, want to keep at the top end of
That was
that.
kind of
And just, we had a speaker earlier talking about, the roundabout is in that plan. I can see that, and obviously, if things change there, we can amend it later. But I just want people to know it's going to be in there for approval, and so. But doesn't necessarily mean it's a done deal, so I don't want everybody to panic. That might, not that people read into the detail, but any other comments or questions on this? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll move into the Drew Street discussion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and board members, I'm going to handle this one, and we may have Mike Reardon who wants to speak on this matter. We do not have a formal presentation here, but I want to just give you a report. Last month, you had a presentation from the City of Clearwater on the Drew Street concept plan that we helped fund. And the board members were poised to make a recommendation that we work with FDOT to find funding to advance the concept plan through preliminary engineering phase. But Councilmember Albritton wasn't here, and we didn't want to take that motion with you not here. Since we met, I've met with, our staff have met with DOT, with the city, and with county representatives, and we had a very productive dialogue. And the department informs me that they have found money in this fiscal year for the preliminary engineering study of Drew Street from Osceola Avenue to US 19. So that's exactly what we wanted. The department will lead that effort in partnership with the county, with the city, and with us. And we look forward to getting started and really appreciate the department finding money. Hopefully it came from Pasco or Hillsborough or Citrus County. But we appreciate, $385,000 is, I believe, the amount. It's not a ton of money, but it's really helpful to kind of take those concepts and vet them from an engineering standpoint. And I think the City of Clearwater did a great job in getting a lot of citizens engaged in Drew Street about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And I think they'll be ready to help us with public engagement as we go forward, because they have a lot of good contacts of neighborhoods, and will work through Ford Pinellas with the county and with others to alert folks who may not live along Drew Street but travel that corridor day in and day out, and make sure they're involved in the process as well. So I just want to thank the department. That's really a huge opportunity for us. They also came up and contributed some additional dollars to the downtown St. Petersburg mobility study, which we had requested. And we didn't get a chance to put that into the consent discussion earlier, but I did want to note that as well.
I really appreciate the comment about FDOT, that continue to be good partners. They reacted very quickly to our concerns on this particular item. I know that's been on your target anyway, but we've had a lot of input, starting with the City of Clearwater and all the residents along there. But it's not going to go anywhere unless we move to this stage, and it's going to be comprehensive. There's certain areas that are probably more dangerous than other areas, but I think we have to look at it in total. And I think that I'm really excited that we're moving into this phase of Drew Street. Do you have any comments?
You
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I understand. There's up here first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm really glad that DOT's taking this over and moving it forward. I'm very confident in that, and that we'll be able to get this thing fixed quickly. And you guys, that's what you're best at. So, and that being a very long corridor involving many different, not only municipalities but state and county. I'm glad you're taking that over and can move it forward.
Yes, Commissioner Seal.
I like the outline and the approved concepts. I will tell you that I have some reservations about putting roundabouts on Drew Street, especially a potential one at US 19. So I'm just mentioning it at this point.
I think that's what the
I
engineering
like the other
report-
approved concepts that you've already had outlined. I don't know whether that's the city's approved concepts or who it is.
City.
Okay.
Yeah, boy, I'll tell you what, the roundabouts are something that I know FDOT is really encouraging at different places throughout.
I recognize
And,
that.
and we as a state and as a county haven't embraced them yet. And I know there's some places that it really fits perfectly and others that will really test us. So you might experience some pushback from time to time on those. So thank you for making that comment. Any other questions or comments on that? I know Mike wanted to speak. Mike Reardon, come up, please. No fountains.
Pasco first. And by the way, the issue with gentrification and tourism in the same location, that's why everybody's going to Pasco, make a living there, buy a house there and come here. Look at that. That's not why I'm here, though. Overall, I want to say I appreciate this board and FDOT. There was something written in one of the local smaller papers that I've been complaining to the state for 15 years now. I started complaining to the state in April of this year. So I'm told, when Gina Clayton told me that the funds came up for the engineering study on Wednesday's council meeting, and she told me that was very fast, and I appreciate that. And I did meet Justin, so if new, we already shook hands and we're on a good page, so that's I appreciate Mr. Albritton, who stopped by my shop and brought me up to speed from the city, and he had said he had spoken to you two. I think I left you both, Mr. Bland and Eggers, a message that when I got excited when I heard the funds last Wednesday were approved for the study. I do have one request, though, maybe before we even tear up a sidewalk. I would really like to see the section that's 40 miles an hour right around Jupiter to Myrtle changed. They put signs up that flash when you go over 40, but today I was driving up Countryside Boulevard. It's 40 miles an hour, and you don't feel like you're going 40 miles an hour. I mean, and the study showed that a large portion, 50% or more, that they crest Highland Avenue when they're coming on that downhill grade are doing in excess of 50 to 55 miles an hour, and that's the residential section. I don't think it's too much to ask to change that section to 30 miles an hour. Now, 30 miles an hour is faster than any human has ever run. Okay? Look it up. It's less than 2 miles from Jupiter. So if you change it from 40 to 30, you're still going to get people doing 40 and 45. But right now at 40, you're getting 55 and 60. And the speed, and the reason I'm happy Mr. Albritton is, I think, the best qualified on the city council, not just because he's got a construction background. He's been on bikes over 40 or 50 miles an hour. So he understands the speed. Today's cars make you feel like you're going a lot slower than you really are. That's the one thing I would really like to see happen now. It is not a thoroughfare. I've confirmed that with FDOT, Kimley Horn, and Rick Hartman of the city. It is not a thoroughfare. It was treated and looked at, and it was called a thoroughfare by one of the executive council members of Clearwater. And I think that's why for 40 or 50 years, it was treated like a thoroughfare, and it's not. But anyway, I really appreciate it. I think the walk or bike, these roads, I think every city or municipality, county has a road, has a Drew Street. It might not be 2 miles. I'll be watching Ms. Seal, who this is your district, to make sure it goes well. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the board, FDOT, and we'll go from there. And since I live on it and walk on it, or almost live on it, work on it, and ride it, I'll keep my eyes open. And again, Mr. Eggers, thanks for coming out. I think that went further walking it than anything else.
That was scary stuff.
Yeah, we all learn, live and learn.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about that just briefly. I know that I really, again, can't thank FDOT enough about moving this forward, advancing it so quickly. What about the speed, especially in areas? I think that area that we're talking about. If you just walk it, and I'm sure some of you have, it is frightening how close you are to especially if one of those trucks goes by and has a mirror that's about this far out. It almost grazed me as we were walking down that street and having to avoid the poles sitting in the middle of the sidewalk. So you kind of had to shimmy yourself around there. Can we talk about speed on that area? Yeah, please. Or recommendations to adjust or?
Sure. Ed McKinney with the Florida Department of Transportation. To Mike's point and to your point, Chairman, absolutely. So we're going to look at a lot of different things. I don't want to predetermine the study because that gets very dangerous if we start saying, well, we're going to look at the problem in that area. I'll say there are several things. Yeah, looking at the speed, but also the pedestrian access and how could we make better use of that corridor, given the constraints that you've got a lot of properties that are abutting the edge of right-of-way. Whit and I talked about, some things that we can consider and look at. In all honesty, it really doesn't fit the definition of what a state road should be. It does function more like a community road. So we're going to look at it from the context of how do we make this more a local road. And so, everything's on the table. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I'm trying to.
Probably one of my other questions that I didn't ask you were answering, but this is more like, what can we do tomorrow? Because this process that we're going through clearly is going to take some time. And you're right, you don't want to determine the outcome. So what about now?
Yeah, the thing about speed is without changing something physical feature about the road, whether it's the geometry or something, people are going to ignore it. I mean, that's the challenge. You could post a speed limit, you could lower it to 30 miles an hour, but people drive as safe as they feel they can drive. And the way the state law determines speed limits on our facilities really is how fast people are going now, right? We do speed studies and we look at how fast they're going, and we set speed limits by formula based on those speeds. It's crazy. I'm not saying it's right.
You said it. I was about to, but thank you for.
But we do have an opportunity to do some things without changing some physical features to make people feel like, they've got to drive slower. They're not going to do it. That's just, the studies have just shown that. So one of the things we're going to do in this study is change physical features out there to lower speed limits.
Well, I can tell you, and I don't know who patrols, to Commissioner Bujalski or Mayor Bujalski's comment earlier, I don't know who patrols that road, whether it's city or sheriff. I don't think it would be highway patrol through there, but it would be city or. To me, if you, and I think the point is well taken, if it's 40, people are going to go at least 50, 55. And if there's no enforcement, they continue to do that.
Right.
If you go 30, they're going to go 40 and 45 because, if there's enforcement, it might make a difference. And so, I just think it's something that we need to look at because really between now and whenever the changes get done, you're talking 5 years, 3 years.
Well, in our study, what we'll do is we'll look at some short-term things that we could do quickly. I'll give you an example on Bush Boulevard in Hillsborough County. We're actually doing some things around Chamberlain High School area, if you're not familiar with that area, kind of north of where the zoo is. In that area, they have the same similar problem, a lot of high speed. There's been some kids get hit from crossing the street, attending the high school. So there are some things that we're doing out there. Enforcement is a big thing, but also those message signs seem to help. So we'll look at some short-term.
I do think between the downhill, it's really downhill there, and then it kind of goes back up a little bit by the golf course there, and between the narrowness of the sidewalks and there's no continuity of sidewalk either. You have poles there, and there are folks, frankly, who are, if they're handicapped, they couldn't get by if they wanted to. Have to get into the street or fall into the street, which I know there's been reports of. So if you can, as you're looking at these things in the short term, that's a critical area. So I'd really encourage you to look at the speed and whatever else needs to be done while the whole project's being considered. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Will do.
The other, yes.
Just one thing. The message signs do work well, but the problem is once you take them down, it goes back to, the 40, 50. We've done that several times in different areas on the beaches, and it will work beautifully. And as soon as you take the signs down, everybody goes, back up to the over 45, over.
That's a great point. Have we used them there before?
I don't know, but I would venture to guess the reason why they're not there is because you'd have to put them on a sidewalk, or, I mean, the right-of-way is so constrained. I mean, we can't put them on private property. But we can look at that. I mean, there are permanent, those signs that can be placed permanent. We can look at that, probably in advance of the study.
Yeah, there's a place where the sidewalk stops and there's dirt beyond that. You might be able to put one right there.
If we own the right of way or we can get an easement, yeah, but unfortunately, if it's not
I
our
understand.
property, you
I
know,
understand.
and you don't want to put it on a sidewalk
No.
or obstruct somebody's, because you already have a problem out there. You'd just be adding to it.
Go ahead, are you finished? I didn't know.
Well, I was just, so you're saying you cannot put them on private property, but you can, it would have to be on an easement, and you can't put them on the sidewalk. I was just trying to think of another place in that area that.
That's what I wanted to speak to. If I can just add to your conversation, what we do in our city, and we have put them in permanently, because you're right, once they're gone, they go back up. We attach, they're about this big, and we attach them to the actual speed limit sign.
Right.
So if the speed limit says 40, the thing is right on that sign.
We can look at that. I mean,
That's how we do it.
don't need to wait
And it's
for a
very
study.
effective. It
All right.
really is.
We'll look at that.
All right, well, please
Fair
look
enough.
at it.
And they're permanent.
Sooner and quicker than you can. That would be great. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Since FDOT's already taken action on this item, we don't have to take action. So, again, appreciate that effort. All right, we'll move into election of the 2020 officers. We had no nominating committee. We're in the second year of this group. Is there anybody else who would be interested, or anybody who wants to make a motion for approval of this group?
Move approval.
Second.
Get that? Okay, so that would leave the same group in place. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the Forward Pinellas membership. Ross, no, is that right? Yeah.
It's the appointments to the committees.
Yeah, appointments to the different committees. And we have for the MPOAC, for the CCC, and the 3 members of the TMA leadership group. Same thing. Are there anybody else that would be interested, or do you want to? Yes, council member.
I would nominate Commissioner Sofer to take my place as an alternate, if she is so willing.
Did
I jump ahead of you? I'm sorry, as the MPOAC.
Okay, as the MPOAC.
Thank you.
Alternate, there's 2, we have 2 alternates, right? Instead of you mean? Okay. Okay. Anybody else interested? Do I have a motion to approve the group with the change from Councilmember Rice to
So moved.
Commissioner Sofer?
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
David Albrecht.
Albritton. Yeah.
TMA people.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we'll move into the director's report.
Okay, moving right along. I'll try to be brief on this. The main update for, I'll just start with the spotlight emphasis area and just let you know that we have a draft report for the Gateway Master Plan that we are in the process of reviewing. And Chelsea, I'll have all my review comments when you come back from vacation. They sent us the implementation plan, which is a key piece of how we're going to go forward with the Gateway Master Plan. So just a quick update there. I had a chance to speak with Richard Moss of DOT yesterday, and he said things are going well with the sidewalk and safety project on Gulf Boulevard. So we should be moving ahead successfully with that with Indian Shores, and they are keeping the mayor and Bonnie and the team in the loop on that. On regional transit funding, it's really more Pinellas County funding. You all, some of you have alluded to the discussion yesterday at the Board of County Commissioners workshop, and we are continuing to work with PSTA and with the county staff to make sure that the numbers and the cost assumptions that have been incorporating the city's input are being accurately reflected and balanced out over time. We will be meeting in the next couple of weeks with PSTA and county staff to just go over those numbers and make sure that everybody's on the same page and understands what's being presented. The county administrator is looking for ways to potentially bond some of those revenues if the board moves forward with a recommendation, and advance projects as quickly as possible. So I think the message is clear that transportation is a priority in Pinellas County. There's a lot of good feedback and input that we're getting in this process, and we will continue to move that forward as best we can. So I feel that the partnership is strong and continuing to look at all those needs that are out there. The Chairs Coordinating Committee and TMA Leadership Group interlocal agreement and operating agreement, I won't dwell on too much, but it's in your packet. And I just wanted to highlight a few things. You know, we have a little bit of a complicated, fragmented, whatever adjective you want to use, regional transportation planning process with all of our partners. And the Chairs Coordinating Committee is that umbrella framework that covers 6 MPOs, 7 county, 8 county region. And the TMA Leadership Group is a subset of that that covers the 3, Pasco, Hillsborough, and Pinellas. The interlocal agreement has some modifications in it that will be presented to the Chairs Coordinating Committee next month at its meeting that really just formalizes the role of the TMA Leadership Group as a subcommittee of the Chairs Coordinating Committee. And by doing that, it brings in all the other statutory requirements of the CCC. So the TMA now benefits from having a conflict resolution process or dispute resolution process. It formalizes the roles and responsibilities of staff. And we're also reaffirming the Chairs Coordinating Committee's responsibilities relative to TBARTA. This is under TBARTA. It's a TBARTA Citizen Chairs Coordinating Committee now. And what we're trying to do is let TBARTA focus on regional transit and let the MPOs focus on MPO responsibilities. So there's language in the interlocal agreement and in the operating agreement that preserve TBARTA's statutory responsibility, but just give that clear ownership and responsibility to the MPO staff. That's all I'll really say about the interlocal agreement. The operating agreement has a little bit more specificity, and it's got underline and strike through in your packet. Just the one highlight there, which I think is significant, is that we are moving toward an annual chair and vice chair for the TMA Leadership Group. We will make that determination at our next meeting in February because there may be some membership changes happening as a result of elections and appointments. So we will have an annual chair and an annual vice chair of the TMA Leadership Group. At the TMA meeting on Friday, there was consensus that these changes were acceptable and there was no objection to moving forward with them. The process is that we will take this to the CCC in December. The CCC will act on the interlocal agreement, and then we will bring all of this back to the respective MPOs in January for your action in approving the TMA Leadership Group operating agreement and the CCC interlocal agreement and authorizing the chairman to sign. So it's a little bit of a process, but we'll be done with it in January. And I think these are significant changes to streamline our regional process a little bit more.
Yeah,
and
I think that,
just
I think that one annual, the move to an annual chairmanship, I think was kind of a natural progression, but I think it also is what our representatives in Tallahassee wanted to see.
That was the point I was going to make.
Okay, yep. Sorry. They really felt it was important that they look to this community down here, this region, and be able to talk to a person on any issue that might be going on that we're bringing forward, instead of wondering who's the chair for this meeting or who's the chair for the next meeting. So I think it'll be good from that standpoint. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's it. Well stated. Any questions for me on that? Okay, so this is just for information today and for action in January. Let's see, what else is on my list? The last thing is the trip we made to Minneapolis, St. Paul. I had this on the agenda last month and I just blew right past it. There is a short little write-up in your agenda packet. I won't belabor it, but these trips to other jurisdictions are really valuable. And just wanted to highlight that the Twin Cities has regional governance going on. They have the Met Council. They have a single regional economic development entity. They seem to be good partners. They do have a competition. What do they call it? A cooperation between Minneapolis and St. Paul. They do compete, but they also cooperate a great deal. And I think there's some tremendous lessons learned on affordable housing, transportation, how they fund things. It was interesting, their transit system has 30,000 park and ride lots, and on a typical day, they're about 70% full. So people really use those park and ride lots, and that's because they have really good transit connecting into the job employment areas. And they have a tremendous number of Fortune 500 companies, like 17 Fortune 500 companies. So a lot of good lessons learned. Commissioner Welch, you were on that trip. Anything you want to add about Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Just the one question we asked the transportation leaders about funding. Their answer was not what we expected, is that they still struggle for funding every year. So.
They do. And I guess the lesson learned is there's never enough funding for everybody to go around. So you do have to prioritize. Yep. And you have to have good partners when you prioritize.
Exactly.
Speaking of priorities, did you want to talk about anything at the TMA discussion group on our regional priorities? Or is that coming back for us in January as well?
Yeah, so let me touch on the TMA meeting, that's a good point. We met on Friday. The TMA meeting went really well. The board voted to add to our priorities a recommendation back to the respective MPOs to add the 2 items to the regional priority, and we're working on the wording on this, to support Hillsborough Area Regional Transit's exploration and assessment of the CSX tracks in Hillsborough County for possible joint use as passenger rail or for potential purchase. And that was basically a show of support, moral support, probably more than anything. There was some back and forth on whether there's an actual project, and I don't know that there's an actual project, but there was an action of the HART board and the MPO board, and they have potentially local funding to begin that process. But Councilmember Rice made, I think, a smart move by adding to that support for the regional rapid transit project that TBARTA is currently studying in PD&E phase. And I think the challenge we had in discussion was that if you're putting this on the priority list about CSX, which is not quite yet ready for prime time, but a show of support, and you want to go to your legislators to say we're all unified around this, they're going to ask about the regional rapid transit project, and that's much further along, and it's got a much more certain outcome. So I think it was great to add that. The Hillsborough and Pasco members voted to support that as well. So we have 2 additions to our regional priority, neither of which are yet real projects, but they are along the path to becoming a real project, and I think that's acceptable. And I think that was a good outcome.
Yeah, I think there was, including some input from FDOT, that when we look at our priorities that we're establishing, that we try to narrow that list a little bit, and so that they were actual projects that were defined and could actually move forward and potentially be funded. So when it came to the CSX, it was it and they. We said, well, that's not going to fit on a priority list, so let's define what you really mean. And so we got down to supporting their exploration, discussion, and there was another word that I didn't like that they used, negotiation, but you need a project defined before you negotiate. And so anyway, I think it turned out fine, and want to thank you for your catching that opportunity.
And I'd like to thank you, Chair Eggers, because that was a difficult meeting to run, because we did get surprised by a last-minute play. And it's a lot to try to manage on your feet when, it would have been nice to have a little bit of advance notice from our partners that they were going to put the CXS plan on the table, but you did a great job.
Well, thank you for that. And back to your St. Paul, Minneapolis, kind of lessons learned. Maybe we could pick up 1 or 2 of those, and how sides of the bay cooperate a little better. At least we're at the table talking together through the TMA, and we're still working through some of the bumpy roads from time to time. But Anything else?
Just no, I thought that was good. We'll bring that back in January for formal action of this board. We didn't advertise it for this meeting because we didn't know that was going to be an outcome. So we'll do it in January. What I also wanted to just mention real quick is that I went to the MPOAC meeting and Chairman Eggers wasn't able to make that meeting. We are going to be dealing with a new consolidated planning grant where our FTA funds and our federal highway funds are combined. And there's some uncertainty we have as a staff level of how that'll be handled. It's inside baseball on MPOs, but we hope to get a little more insight in how that'll work. But essentially what it'll do, it'll make our jobs a lot easier, our lives a lot easier, by just having one set of federal funds coming into us rather than one set from FTA with a set of rules and one set from federal highway with a different set of rules. And it should help the timing because right now they are disjointed and we should be able to get all those funds at one time if all goes well. So more to report on that hopefully after our December statewide meeting. And that's really all I have today.
That's all you have. And then we have a bunch of informational items here to look through. I did want to note, because it's another government agency, the city of South Pasadena sent a letter letting us know they're not supporting the PSTA bus rapid transit project on Pasadena Avenue, and that's included in here. Also, a lot of other good information in there. Also, just to know that the CAC, or Citizens Advisory Committee, has 2 vacancies, one from St. Petersburg and one at large. And our local coordinating board has 2 openings, one for citizen who is a TD writer and an opening for public education representative. So we're looking for those 4 to round up our committees. And I think that's all we have.
I have one more item, and we didn't have a legislative committee meeting this month. We will resume in January. There is some interest on the part of Representative Webb to sponsor an urban agriculture bill, and we are eagerly awaiting to see if she will file it by the November 22nd filing deadline. If anybody has any particular desire to reach out to Jennifer Webb and encourage her to file that legislation, we would appreciate that. I will reach out to her personally, but any other help would be great.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
That's it. Any closing thoughts here before we adjourn? Thank you for hanging in there, everybody.
Happy holidays to everybody, because we won't see each other, right?
That's right. Thanksgiving, Christmas,
Yeah.
New Year's.
Just remind everybody about the Mayor's Council holiday luncheon on December 6th.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. And therefore, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.